PM, David Swinder versus Michelle Swinder, Attorney McNiff for plaintiff and Attorney Podolsky for defendant.
Good morning to everyone. Just want to address, we had that conference yesterday over the phone concerning some issues for today's hearing. And I was not aware at the time of that discussion that perhaps the change in school in this matter would be potentially a change in the established custodial environment. So at the time, after I talked to everyone, I did have a chance to review the Puron case. And at that time, kind of the light went off and I thought, oh, that's what they were talking about. So I guess I thought both parties were local. And so that's why I was having a little bit of trouble with the conversation, because I thought, well, this doesn't make sense. But in view of that, if it's not, the point that Ms. Podolsky was making about interviewing the children, I would have to, if there's potentially a change in the established custodial environment. So the court would, in fact, interview the children. Obviously, we're set up again for Thursday. I don't know who the children are with, but I would anticipate we could do that Thursday morning at, shortly after 8 o'clock, because the building doesn't open till 8, but as soon as they got here and could do it, then we could do the interview at that time. So who would have the children on that date?
Dr. Swinder has them.
Okay. Well, he'll have to arrange to have somebody bringing them other than himself so that he can appear at 8:30 and be ready for the hearing.
I believe Grandma can probably do that.
Okay.
Your Honor, though, I because you did mention established custodial environment, the parties do have a partial settlement agreement that grants them equal joint legal custody, joint physical custody with equal parenting time.
Okay.
And so I think that we had agreed that there is an established custodial environment with both parents.
Okay. I was going to get to that next, Ms. McNiff. After reflecting on our conversation, and again, I felt cut out of sorts in that because the two of you are talking about different things. And then once I went back to Puron, I go, oh, they're talking about something completely different than I thought they were talking about. So that's why I wanted to bring it up today before we got started.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. So, Ms. Podolsky, you can avoid having to put all of that on the record and the exception and everything else that we had talked about, because at this point, I'm on the same page with you finally. So
thank you, Judge.
Okay.
We may not all agree with the Michigan Supreme Court, but unfortunately, we've got to listen to them.
Okay. Well, the parties had, in fact, addressed, as Ms. McNiff is stating, the parties have addressed some various issues preliminary to today's trial. And I guess, Ms. McNiff, because you are the plaintiff's attorney, I'll let you kind of set the parameters for that on what we do have an agreement on, and then we can inquire of the parties as well.
I believe, Your Honor, that we're agreed that the parties do have an established custodial environment with both parents. We've also agreed that the best interest factors A through G and J and K are equal for both parties. We think the disputed factor is H, which is the homeschool and community record, and of course the children's preference pursuant to Perone versus Perone. Also, I'm asking for a stipulation to admit Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, which is Dr. Swinder's 2023 W-2, and Exhibit 3, which is a copy of his pay stub from, I believe, December of 2023.
Okay.
I would stipulate to the W-2, and I'll stipulate to the pay stub. However, the one that was given to me was pay period end date 11/25/23.
I believe that's right.
Okay.
That should be my Exhibit 3.
Excuse me, Ms. McNiff?
I believe that's our Exhibit 3.
Okay.
I knew it was near the end of the year.
Okay. Well, if we could, so that is the agreement. That's your aware, Ms. Podolsky?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Well, I'd inquire further the parties and let them know that obviously you're stipulating to some pretty substantial issues in the case. And you understand, you stipulate to that, the court's going to accept all of that as true, meaning that you've stipulated that there's a established custodial environment with both parties. You've stipulated to factors A through G and J and K, and that those in fact are equal as to both parties. So the court's not going to address those. You understand that. And as a result, you're not going to have the ability to appeal in the future on those particular stipulations. And that the court's going to accept all those as true. You understand that, Mr. Swindler?
I do.
And Ms. Swindler, you understand that as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McNiff, you ready to proceed?
I am, Your Honor.
And Ms. Podolsky?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. McNiff, do you wish to make an opening statement or proceed to your proofs?
I'll proceed to my proofs.
Okay. Ms. Podolsky, do you want to make an opening statement, reserve your opening statement, or waive your opening statement?
I'll be waiving my opening statement.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McNiff, you can proceed with your first witness.
Your Honor, I believe Ms. Kellie Fitzpatrick is in the waiting
Go
room.
ahead.
Ms. Fitzpatrick, where do you work?
I work at Marshall Public Schools.
And how long have you been there?
Gosh, this is my 20th year.
And what do you do there?
So currently I'm the director of curriculum and instruction.
And what does that entail?
So I facilitate the training for teachers and principals. I direct the selection of our curriculum, the execution of our curriculum, and develop best practice instruction for all of our teachers for the district.
Are you involved in any way in hiring teachers?
Yes.
And how do you look for teachers when you're hiring them?
So right now we're in a nationwide shortage, right? So we try to use every method possible. We post to multiple websites. We have an internal website that we use, and we also use different vendors to post.
And are there any, because there is a teacher shortage, is there any different accommodations now for teachers who maybe have had a teaching license lapse?
Yeah, so the state of Michigan offers, it's called the Welcome Back program, specifically for teachers whose certifications have lapsed. So if you've previously held a teaching certificate, you might have had a barrier before of advancing your education. There was a brief period of time where you had to accumulate so many college credits to renew your teaching license. They've since waived that. They've allowed, I apologize, they've allowed districts to waive that once they've hired someone.
And is Marshall a district that does waive that?
Correct.
And have you had to waive that for other teachers in the district in recent times?
Yes.
And how long would it take to restore a license or a teaching certificate?
So there's two different categories. If you taught for fewer than 5 years, there's a little bit of a different path that involves mentoring, but mostly you can restore it almost immediately as long as you have secured a job at a district.
And do you know if there are any openings in Calhoun County for high school teachers with a Spanish or a French background?
Yeah, we actually just posted a vacancy yesterday for a Spanish teacher.
And is it difficult to find language teachers?
Absolutely.
Do you have any idea what the range of pay will be for that particular job?
Yeah, so it's typically based on experience. So our starting salary, if someone has no experience and a bachelor's degree, would be about $42,000. If they have a master's degree, it'd be $45,000. But all the way up to a person, if they had 15 years of experience, we actually honor that experience, so they could be making $70,000.
Okay. And when will you start taking applications for that particular position?
The one that we just posted, we can apply right now.
And do you know approximately when you'll be making a decision regarding the applicants for that position?
So like I said, it's super rare to find different people. Oftentimes we have to try to sheep steal from other districts. So it'll be open until it's filled. So sometimes it takes some time.
And if you found somebody that had that certification in Spanish and had a lapsed license, what could you do to help accommodate them to take that position?
Yeah, so that's actually part of my job. We we assist them in the whole process, like in their application to the state. We file our waiver right after, like, alongside their job offer. So usually they're able to be certified to teach within 2 weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I have no further questions.
Okay, Ms. Podolsky, any cross?
Just briefly, Ms. Fitzpatrick, is there a time limit on the lapse? Are you looking at a few months, a year, 2 years? What if it's a significant lapse?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the lapse doesn't affect, your ability to renew. So it's really as long as you previously held the certification.
Okay. And how, this was for a high school position, is that correct?
That's for any teaching position.
The one that's
posting.
vacant, I'm sorry, the posting.
Correct.
And how many high school Spanish teachers do you have in Marshall?
3 currently.
And do you offer French?
Not currently, because we couldn't find someone. We had the position posted 4 years ago, and it was posted for an entire year. We couldn't secure a candidate, so we wound up, we do have students who take foreign languages online, like French. So if we had a candidate, that would be a program we would love to offer again. We used to have a really robust French program, actually.
And what if somebody only has a bachelor's degree? Is it a requirement to attain a master's degree to continue teaching?
No, it used to be a long time ago, but again, with the teacher shortage, they've completely absolved any furthering of your education to maintain your degree.
And what do you, when you mentioned, if somebody had, say, 15 years of experience, what do you consider as experience? Is that in school teaching?
So it can be substitute teaching. It can be, I'm going to ask a clarifying question if I can do that. Do you mean when establishing pay or with the certification?
The establishing pay, excuse me, thank you.
Okay, yeah, so the establishing pay, it has to be with either a public or a charter school in order for us to, identify continuance of employment and things like that. So to match someone's salary, they would have to be in a public or charter school.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, anything else, Ms. McNiff?
A couple brief follow-ups. So do you have substitute teachers who teach in the language area?
Yeah, so substitute teacher, so anybody who has earned 60 college credits could be a substitute teacher. In order to be a long-term substitute teacher, you'd have to have taken a certification test in that area. So we're talking about Spanish. If you had taken at any point in time a Spanish test, you could be a long-term sub, and that currently gets paid $145 per day.
And do you have any long-term subs in either French or Spanish? Well, you don't have a French program in Spanish currently?
We don't have a need for long-term subs because we just posted the vacancy. If we do not find a person to take the full-time position, we would have to hire a long-term sub or a day-to-day sub, someone to teach that class.
Would someone who has experience teaching both French and Spanish be a bonus?
Yeah, oh yeah. Just because then we could maybe restore, especially at Marshall, just because we have a sister city program with a small city in France that we have a really strong relationship with because of that previous robust program. So that would be a really attractive candidate for us.
I have no further questions.
Okay, anything else, Ms. Podolsky?
Just briefly, you stated that you don't have a need for a long-term sub. Is this to fill an immediate position, or is this a position in the future?
So this is a position that will open up because of a teacher vacating that position.
So you're looking at the fall of 2024?
24, 25, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick. That will conclude your testimony. You're free to go. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
Do we have either a Megan Ransom or a chat?
We have this Megan Ransom here.
I would call Megan
Go ahead, Ms.
Ransom.
McNiff, when you're ready.
Thank you. Ms. Ransom, do you know the parties?
Yes.
And how do you know them?
Well, primarily I had their daughter Claire in Orchestra. I've also interacted with them in like casual interactions, like our daughters were on the same softball team last year. Dr. Swender's my allergy doctor. I've seen them at dance recitals, so lots of overlap in circles.
And do you know me?
Yes.
How do you know me?
You're my neighbor.
Okay.
You live 2 houses away from me.
Okay. And it seems very strange to call you Ms. Ransom. May I call you Megan?
Yes, that's fine.
Megan, where do you work?
I work at Marshall Public Schools. I work in the middle school and in the high school.
And what do you do there?
I teach orchestra to 6th through 12th grade students.
And what's your educational background?
I like mine.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I went to an undergraduate like music education program at Cornerstone University in Grand Rapids. I did half of a music education master's at MSU before having small children and taking a break from that. And I recently resumed taking master's level courses through Eastern Michigan University for a curriculum and instruction degree, master's.
Awesome. So how did you get to know Claire as a student? How did she come to your class?
Well, so she would come to class for just my class. And so when I first met Claire was to get her sized for an instrument, right? For her to try the instruments and figure out what size is appropriate for her. And that's normally a very quick interaction anytime I do that with any student. And this one was also, it only took a few minutes to just, chit chat kind of thing for a few minutes, got her correct size. And then when I saw her again, it was at registration in August before the school year started. And that's when I got a little bit of information from Michelle about Claire's sensitive hearing and general, just kind of a very quick summary of we get anxious sometimes, and that's something that we need to kind of take care of and have a plan for. And so I got that information before the school year started. And then once we had a chance to, I was able to show Claire that attached to my classroom in a practice room, I have a calm down room that any student can use when they need it. And so, we talked through that and we kind of had a plan in place for managing those two things that Michelle had told me about. And then she came to school every day and she received grades in Power School. And if there was going to be a weird schedule due to like assemblies or things like that, I would just let them know. And so she would know what time to come in if the schedule changed, or if there was some kind of special event happening, we weren't having class or whatever. And it was usually simple, just an email or text to Michelle to just be like, hey, this is when class is actually happening. And so she'd show up at the correct time and come and do her job.
What instrument did Claire play?
Cello.
And so Claire was homeschooling at the time she was taking your class?
Yes.
And do you have other homeschoolers who come in and take music?
I don't have any others this year, but I have had others in the past. I know the band has had others in the past as well, where at the middle school, pretty much any homeschool student could come in and just do music. At the high school, you have to be part of a specific program. I don't know which one. We have to be part of a specific program to come at the high school, but at the middle school, yeah. And I've had it before. I don't have any this year, but yeah, it's pretty normal.
And you talked about Claire having some special needs and needing to like sometimes get away. How often did that happen when she was in your class?
Well, I wasn't keeping track at the time, but she was extremely good at handling it, and so it was very subtle. It didn't. There were times where it would take me a second to even notice that she had like gone into the calm down room because she was so like quiet and polite about it. And so, I mean, a couple of times a month probably, but, a lot of times it'd just be for a few minutes. She'd kind of gather herself and then come back into the classroom. But yeah, I think about a couple of times a month. It wasn't every day.
What kinds of things would happen in the classroom that would trigger her to need to go to a separate room?
Usually it was, she wouldn't give me, a lot of details if it was something that was getting to her that wasn't related to class. Like if it was something that happened in class, maybe it was the room as a whole was getting a little bit too loud, and so she might step out for a few minutes until she could hear that it had quieted back down. And that was pretty easy to just check on her, because anytime she would go into the calm down room, I'd give her a minute or two, and then I would go and check on her and make sure she didn't need anything that either I could provide or the office. And so if it was just that the room got too loud or something like that, she would just go in there to have a quieter space and then come back out when it was quieter. And sometimes it was like, I remember one time her younger siblings were sick and she was worried about them. And so it was she was having a harder time focusing on her work in class because she was worried about her younger siblings. And so she would just go into the calm down room for a little bit just to kind of like regulate herself and then come back out and keep working. So a couple of times a month, and sometimes I knew the details, but a lot of the times it was just, hey, are you okay? Do you need me? Sometimes she would write me a note just like, nope, I'm okay, whatever, if that was easier.
So when she would go to the calm down room, did she, was her crying, or was it just like, oh, I need a minute? How was her demeanor when she would access the calm room?
When she was in the calm down room, I don't think she maybe cried once, maybe. And it would not have been frequent. If that ever happened, it would not have been frequent. Or if she was, she would calm herself down and collect herself before she came back. So I didn't see her crying on maybe one time. And I don't remember why, but then she would just sort of calm back down and come out. But normally if I went in and checked on her, her demeanor looked about the same as it was the rest of the time, honestly, because normally, you know, she just sort of takes up her space and she kind of keeps her body together and she's calm and quiet most of the time anyway. So she would still look like herself. She was just in the calm down room. And, you know, sometimes she would read a book to calm down for a few minutes or something like that. But I mean, she still looked like herself. I could just tell usually you can tell from like what she's looking at is what she's focused on. And so if she was having a harder time, she maybe wouldn't look right at me, or, you know, she would just nod instead of saying yes or things like that. So she'd get a little like a quieter version of herself. But I mean, she still looked the same, sat the same, responded the same.
Is that a difficult accommodation to make for a student?
No, the space is set up for my students to be able to use whenever they need it. There's times where they're supposed to ask first. There's times where I suggest like, hey, actually you could take a few minutes in the calm down room right now. I think that would help you or whatever, but it's there for any of my students and we have procedures built in place for how to use it.
How did Claire interact with the other students?
She did not interact with the other students very much, but I attributed that more to her just kind of being an introverted person. Like if a student talked to her, she would talk to them. If she, if it was something like if I say, turn to your stand partner and do this, she would do it every time, no problem. But she wouldn't like go start conversations with the other kids. If there was extra time at the end of class, she was more likely to read or something like that. But this particular group of kids, that was extremely common. Like I still have 5 or 6 other kids where if there's time in class, they will just pull out a book. And so she was just matching the vibe of other students that were similarly quiet like she was.
Did she seem receptive to other kids' overtures to her?
Yeah, there were a couple of kids that she had some familiarity with from either doing theater productions or dance class, or there was a student that takes from the same piano teacher. And so there were kids that she had some familiarity with. And so, if they were talking to her, it was fine. She's just a quieter kid. So I didn't think anything of it. Like it wasn't extraordinarily too quiet or anything like that.
Did she ever seem disturbed by other kids? And I know middle school can be kind of a raucous environment.
That's such a nice word for it. I would say she had a perfectly normal reaction to perfectly normal middle school behaviors, where it's like there were times where it was hilarious. Like her face was like, what is that kid doing? Right. But because that was what my face also was doing, right? Like in that moment. Right. So she was responding with the same energy as the rest of the class most of the time. And like if something funny happened, she would laugh or things like that. Like she was definitely able to like catch the energy of the room. But like her face was very incredulous a lot of like, these people are weird. And like she seemed amused by it.
Okay. Thank you, Megan. I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Ms. Podolsky?
Thank you. Ms. Ransom, is there a time limit placed on the calm down room?
I normally have my students aim for about 10 minutes or so. And that's just the procedure that works for my space because it's a entirely separate, like it's a room attached to my room, right? So there's a door and everything. So, I give them about 10 minutes. I check on them if they're in there. If a student needs more time than that, I usually will recommend that they go to the office to get help from maybe one of the counselors or one of the secretaries to help them process faster and get back to being able to do their work more quickly.
Was a time limit ever placed on Claire?
No, if she needed the room longer, I wouldn't make her leave. she didn't know a lot of other adults in the building. And so I didn't want to send her to the office because that would have been a new environment and probably more stressful for her than just getting a little extra time in my room.
And how did she do in your class?
She did extremely well. She came in with a lot of musical knowledge already because of her piano playing. And she's also an extremely coordinated person because of her dance skills. And so she learned the cello extremely quickly and worked really hard every day anyway to continue being better. Like, she always assumed that there was something she could do better. She would practice outside of school, which I know because I'm sorry, my phone just made a sound. I'm sorry if that interrupted. Okay, what was I saying? Oh, she would come in the next day with like questions about like, I was doing this thing on my own and I, was wondering about this or whatever. So she learned very quickly and she worked very hard. She's extremely good at the cello.
And obviously, I mean, this is a music class, it's a performance class. Is there an academic component as well?
Yes, there's note reading tests. They get tested on for any concert cycle. They'll get tested on 2 or 3 different things that demonstrate new skills that we've learned. And so at the beginning of the year, these were very short, right? Like testing them on, can they do a bow hold correctly? Like, there's components of the bow hold. Can they do that? And so like, there's rubric and everything, right? So it's like testing on their bow hold, testing on their posture, testing on their ability to read notes and things like that in the beginning of the year. And then as the music gets more complicated, right, I might just take a part of a piece and not test the whole thing just for time, right? Like, I don't need to hear the entire thing to hear if they understand the new concepts. So there's tests all throughout the year. There's the note reading tests are usually on a Chromebook. And so Claire would borrow one from the school on the days she needed one. And then all of the rest of them, it's mostly playing tests in my class. But yes, academic component. There's worksheets sometimes if I was going to be gone or something like that. But usually if there was a sub there, Claire wouldn't come.
Okay. And how did she do academically then in your class?
She was brilliant. She's an extremely intelligent student and did really well, took every assessment seriously.
Did you ever find that she struggled to learn in your class?
No, not even a little bit. She's brilliant.
And when she, you said she'd come to class and have questions maybe about what she practiced the day before. Did you ever find these questions to be silly or I can't believe she's asking this type of thing?
No, she was usually asking questions that were covering things we hadn't covered in class yet because she had so much musical training from her piano that she knew about concepts musically that we just hadn't covered physically in class, right? Like, because a lot of the first year instruction is taking things that they already understand from elementary school music, like rhythms they're familiar with, notes they're familiar with, etc. And like, how do you do it on an instrument, right? So how do you do different dynamics? You know what that is, but how do you do it? Like, what's the physical mechanism you need? And so a lot of her questions were more advanced than the rest of the class because she already knew so much coming into it.
Okay. Did you ever have any behavior problems with her in class?
No.
Did you find her to be kind and respectful?
Yes, very kind, very respectful, very polite to the other people. And if she could quietly be helpful to other students that weren't as good as her, she would do that as well. Like I had one student who could kind of never really, like, I would say, okay, we're going to start here. And they'd never really know. So she would point and help and, she wouldn't talk to them, but she would help them quietly.
Were there performances that went along with the class?
Yes, we had in her year, did we have 3 concerts? I should remember this better. I'm so sorry. No, I think we only had 2 concerts and I thought there were supposed to be, but yes, there were concerts. There were evening concerts that the entire class was required to attend.
And did she attend those concerts?
I think so. Didn't you come to those? It's like,
and how?
Sorry, I go through a lot of concerts a year.
That's okay. Did you ever have to deal with any stage fright from her? Anything like that?
Well, I try to help all of my students deal with the concept of stage fright because, concerts are stressful events for everybody, and their behavior changes for everybody, and so it's something where I support all of the students in that. We do specific exercises. We talk about specific things so that everybody has a better base of knowledge. And so I did the same things for Claire that I did for everybody else. I I can't remember specifically, but it's also like she would have been able to use the calm down room if she needed it during that time as well. And I'm very sorry, I cannot remember specifics about if she did before concerts or not.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to see her or the other kids outside of that orchestra setting?
Yes, I've seen them. So at softball games for this, it was just like a Marshall Rec softball team. I've seen her at dance recitals, and she was in Newsies, which I directed last year. She wasn't at rehearsal every day because her character didn't need to be, but she was in that production as well.
Okay. When was softball?
Last summer.
And was it Claire who participated in that?
Yes. And then her siblings usually came to like practices and games and things like that.
Did you have a child playing softball?
Yes. Yes. My daughter was in this. Yeah.
Okay. And so when you're at softball, did you see Claire participating, playing in the practices and games?
Yep. She did her job at softball just like she did in my class. The group was a mix of kids that some of the kids already knew each other and would talk to each other a lot and things like that. So Claire didn't interact with a ton of people during that, but also my daughter didn't interact with a ton of people during that. So it's a weird mix of people.
Okay. And then you said at the dance studio as well. Is that correct?
I've seen her at recitals. I don't see her at dance classes, but I've seen her at recitals.
And how has she come across to you at recitals?
When she is on stage, she's phenomenal. She is so much fun to watch. She just lights up. She's amazing. Before recitals, she does not look comfortable at all. And she kind of has this expression of like dreading every life choice she's done to get her here. And then she gets on stage and just seems to be having the best time. And it's got to be very difficult to go through these highs and lows on these kinds of things. But yeah, no, she does not look comfortable before a recital at all.
And then you said you directed her in Newsies. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And where was that?
The show took place at Marshall High School. And we had middle school and high school students, mostly from Marshall, but from other schools and things like that too. So it was a pretty big cast.
Okay. And how was she as a kid for you to direct in a performance?
I mean, her behavior was exactly the same as what I saw in class every day, right? She would show up, she would do her job. She was always ready for rehearsal. And it was such a large cast and there were so many age ranges and everything. She would interact with a couple of kids that she already knew and things like that. But that was pretty normal, right? The younger kids kind of hung together and the older kids kind of hung together. And so the people that she knew, because there were other classmates in Newsies as well. So they all kind of stuck to the people they were more familiar with.
And did you find that there was any difficulty in directing her because she wasn't learning the material or understanding the staging or the blocking or anything like that?
No, she learned very quickly for Newsies as well and remembered her directions really well. And she commits fully to whatever she's doing. So that is the case with Newsies, just like with Orchestra. When she's there, she's completely present and does her job well.
Were any of the other Swender children in Newsies?
No, she was the only one that was allowed to for her age.
Okay. And going back to softball real quick, how many, seasons, you said it was over the summer, how many summers of softball did you participate or did your child participate?
My daughter only did the one season, and it's like, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks long or something. It's relatively short, very informal, just volunteer coaches. And so I only saw her in the one season.
And were the other Swender children present during softball?
Yeah, a lot of the times at practices or at games, they'd be there. My son would have to come to practices and games with us. And so they would go and play because my son's baseball practices were on different days. So he would come and hang out and go play with whoever was around.
Okay. And did they seem to be well-behaved when they were at practices?
Oh, yes, absolutely. My son got along with them great. My daughter wished that she got to have more time to play with them too. Jude got so much more time to play with them. It was, she was very bitter about that. But, so no, they were great. They seemed like very like for their different ages, very average, like normal behaviors, normal playing. Everything was very normal.
Did you observe them out playing with the other kids who weren't actively engaging in the softball?
There weren't too many extra kids at all of them. Like a lot of the times, Jude and my son, Jude and the Swender kids. I mean, there might be a few random other people around, but it wasn't as consistent as those people.
Okay.
So I don't know.
All right. I have nothing further.
I have a couple follow-up.
Okay, go ahead.
Megan, did you find that Claire's apprehension before recitals was also, did she have the same apprehension before Newsies, before she went on stage?
I wasn't with her before she went on stage for Newsies because I would be with the cast just a little bit. And then I would go out and be with the pit because I was directing the pit as well. So I was working with her in rehearsals daily, but before the performances, I was not with her. The other directors were with them.
Do you find that apprehension that you saw before the recitals to be typical or atypical of other kids? I know all kids have different reactions to those situations, but were hers particularly pronounced?
How to put what I know into words. If I were to see another student as apprehensive as Claire, I would expect their behavior to be a little more chaotic, right? So whenever I would see Claire being uncomfortable or nervous, right, she just sort of gets quieter and more constrained within herself. And normally when students are really, really nervous, it kind of leads them to more manic behaviors instead. And so I would say Claire's response to her anxiety is unusual compared to other middle school age students, but I don't think it's that unusual for students to get very nervous. I see students with really high levels of anxiety before performances and it's extremely common in middle school. By the time they get to high school, they've normally worked themselves out of it because they're more familiar with what's going to happen. They know what concerts feel like. They've done enough of them with me in front of them that they're doing okay. And so usually it's a middle school age issue. It's not something that usually carries into high school. I've had one or two other students with extremely high anxiety that interferes with their ability to do well on stage. And I've never seen it impact Claire's ability to do well on stage. Like she is nervous, but she still performs well.
She overcomes it somehow.
Yeah, other students, if they're that nervous, they get really scattered mentally, can't focus well, don't perform as well as they're able to. And so it causes problems. Claire doesn't, you can tell she's nervous, but she still does it well anyway.
And you indicated that some of the other Swender children would play with your son at softball practices. Which of the Swender children would play with him?
Well, they weren't all there every single time, but whoever was there would play. The youngest one, whose name, William. Aha. All right. So William was, he would normally not be quite as active with the playing. But yeah, whoever's there, Jude will play with anybody. So whichever kids were around, gonna go play.
I can't testify, but I can attest to that.
Yeah.
And did you see any reluctance from any of the other Swender children to engage in play with your son?
No.
I have no further questions.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Podolsky?
Nothing.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Ransom, thank you for your testimony. You're free
Yes.
to go. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
Caleb Hamlin, he says he's a witness for plaintiff.
I will call him.
Go ahead, Ms. McNabb.
Thank you. Mr. Hamlin, where do you work?
Hunter Pearl Company.
And do you know the parties?
I do.
And how do you know them?
I have been their one of the children's hockey coaches for, I think, 4 years now.
In which child?
Henry.
And how long have you been a hockey coach?
Since the kids were 6. So yeah, 4 years now.
And how well do you know Henry?
I've dealt with Henry a lot. Good kid.
Do you know all of the Swender children?
From weekend stuff, yeah. But mostly Henry.
How often does Henry have practices and games?
Typically twice a week practices and once a weekend games over the wintertime. Could be up to 2 / the whole weekend.
And how long does hockey season go?
It starts in October and ends in March.
And do both parents come to the practices and the games?
I've noticed both. Yeah, I've noticed them both. David's usually the one taking the children, from what I've observed.
And is it more often that the boys come to the practices or games with Henry, or do the girls come as well?
I do not see the girls very often. The little one, I think, was playing U6 this year. I saw him quite a bit. But I would say maybe 50% of the time I see the girls there. Maybe a little less, but
And what's U6?
6 years and under.
And so that would be William who was playing that, or Andrew, do you know?
Oh, I don't know. Hockey players always go by last names, so it's always Swender. Little Swender is what I call him.
And can you tell me a little bit about what Henry's like?
Henry's a great-hearted kid. I know he when he gets to practice, he gets around his friends and wants to goof off a little bit. But I think that's pretty typical for a child. My son does the same thing, you know.
Is Henry friends with your son?
He is, yep.
And how close of friends are they?
They're hockey teammates, so you know they're family members for 4 months, 5 months out of the year, and then come back and be family members again. You know, it's a very cool relationship.
Do the boys do things outside of hockey together?
Not that often. When you're around each other 4 or 5 times a week, after hockey, they typically go off and do their own things.
Does Henry initiate contact with the other boys to seek them out?
Yeah. Henry is always seeking approval, whether it's from the coaches or teammates, or he just wants to be part of something. You know, that's my feeling on it.
Is he more of an introvert or more of an extrovert? Somewhere in the middle?
It's somewhere in the middle. Yeah, I would say somewhere in the middle. He like I said, he's always searching for someone, a buddy, or you know, he's always asking, Coach, how'd I do, Coach? You know, and he's always looking for approval.
Is he a hard worker?
He is, especially when you stick something in his head. He strives to achieve that goal.
So is hockey loud? How are the boys? Are they quiet and reserved?
No, no, they're 10-year-old boys. They're all over the place. You know, it's I'm riling children up on the ice for sure. And once they grab a hold of it and they realize what we're trying to do out there, they're very good.
And how does Henry handle that kind of chaotic environment?
Sometimes Henry does really well with that, and sometimes he's over in La La Land over there, you know, and which is very typical for all of them. You know, it just depends on their day, depends on, you know, how many kids are there, which kids, just that kind of stuff.
Do you see any significant differences between the way that Henry interacts and the way the other children interact with one another?
Yeah, I would say all the kids have their own, you know, quirky little things, you know. I could tell this year that Henry was off, especially towards the beginning of the season. Just not really engaging 100%, just, you know, going through the motions, I would say. Which is probably expected, you know, with how life is, you know, going, I would say.
Did you know that mom and dad were going through a divorce?
I didn't until probably a month after, maybe a month and a half, something like that. David came up to me and told me what was going on and this and that, and which I've went through the same thing. So I kind of wanted to grab Henry under my wing, and you know, when we're on the ice, that's the beauty of hockey. When you're on the ice, you can be whoever you want to be, and it all gets left out there, and then life, after you get off, then life starts over again, you know.
Did he perk up eventually?
He did. Yep. Towards the end of the season was definitely becoming the kid that he was prior years. Yes, I would agree with that.
And did you find both parents supportive of him and his hockey endeavors?
I would say, yeah. When David wasn't there, she was there and, doing what a hockey parent does, send him to the locker room and let the coaches deal with them.
Do you see anything in Henry that you think would inhibit him from being able to make friends in a new environment?
I know that Henry is homeschooled, and I feel like when he does get to the rink, he sees his friends and wants to play, wants to just engage with his friends. I do feel that, and then about halfway through practice, I can kind of get him back under control. He's kind of got that out of his system, and now it's time to kind of play hockey.
Do you have other kids on your team who are homeschooled?
I don't think so. I think Henry's the only one. Yeah.
But he seems to enjoy that fraternity of boys.
Oh yes. Henry, he loves his friends. He wants to just be part of. Like I said, he just wants to be part of the clan.
Thank you so much. I have no further questions.
Ms. Podolsky, any questions?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Hamlin. How are you?
I'm doing great.
And you and I know each other. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You said you don't see Andrew very often because you don't coach that particular team. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, they're at the same time. We all get on the same on the ice at the same time. But I'm coaching the other kids. Yes.
Okay. And you said practices are 2 times a week, correct?
Yep.
And where are those practices located?
At downtown at the hockey rink in Battle Creek.
Okay. And what time are practices or were practices?
6 o'clock to 7 or 6:50, 6 to 6:50.
And the October to March season, is that the only season or are there additional shorter seasons?
That is the only season. Yeah.
And are the games in Battle Creek? Where are they at?
No, they're all over the place. We are a house team, but that doesn't mean we just stay there. There's a lot of traveling involved into that. Yes.
And when you're traveling, where are you going?
We're mostly on the west side of the state, so south of GR mostly, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, sometimes a little further away. Tournaments can be a little further away.
Has anything ever required overnight stays?
Yeah, there is some overnight stays that when you got an early hockey game, it's recommended to stay, so you don't have to get up at 4 o'clock to be at the rink at 7 o'clock kind of thing.
Fair to say that Henry likes being part of a team.
Henry does like being part of a team. Yes, he does.
And do the other kids on the team all seem to like him?
Yeah. I know he can act up every now and then, and I relate it to just being a kid, right? Going out there and just playing, tripping people, having fun, right? And he engages well with other kids, and the other kids engage well with him.
Okay. And he said, sometimes he gets to the rink and he's happy to see his friends and wants to play and engage with them. There are other kids who do similar things?
Yes. I mean, all kids have their ups and downs. Not feeling well, parents force them to go still, and not really into it. And you see those up and downs, especially with 10-year-olds. But
and the kids on the team, are they coming from all different school districts in the area?
Yep. Harper Creek, Marshall, Penfield, more just around our area.
So kids who might not necessarily get to see each other during the day.
Correct. Yep.
Have you ever had to approach mom or dad about any negative behaviors that Henry's had?
Not really. I kind of try to treat them as adults and have that conversation with them. And it's usually worked that way to where I don't have to go talk to the parents. We kind of settle it out on the ice, and we're good to go after that.
And does he engage with you appropriately as his coach?
He does. Yep. Very, very he's very respectful.
And does he take advice and critique appropriately?
He does very well. Always asking, is there anything else I can do, coach? What do you think, coach? He's always looking for approval, for sure.
And do you find that he's coachable?
Very coachable. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, Ms. McNiff, any redirect?
I have no redirect.
Okay. Mr. Hamlin, thank you for your testimony. You're free to go. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Okay, we're having a little bit of a problem with Mr. Holt, who is the superintendent at Marley School, but we may have to just take him out of order. So I would call David Swender next. So
Okay.
since we are the plaintiff, I'll go ahead and take the proofs now.
Okay, that's fine.
You are David Swender.
I am.
And do you recall filing a complaint for divorce?
I do.
And when you filed that complaint for divorce, were all of the allegations in it true?
Yes, they were.
And to the best of your knowledge, are they still true?
Yes,
And did you reside in Calhoun County for at least 10 days in the state of Michigan for at least 180 days before you filed that complaint?
I did.
To the best of your knowledge, is your wife currently pregnant?
No.
And has there been a breakdown of your marriage relationship to the extent that the objects of matrimony have been destroyed and there remains no reasonable likelihood that the marriage can be preserved?
yes.
Is there any potential for reconciliation with your wife?
No.
May I please support?
Go ahead, Ms. McNiff.
Dr. Swender, where do you work?
I work at Oakland Hospital.
And what do you do there?
I'm a physician.
And what kind of a physician?
Allergy and immunology,
And how long have you been practicing?
12 years.
And where were you? Tell me about your educational background.
So I went to undergraduate at Michigan State University Honors College, and then did my my medical school at the Osteopathic College at Michigan State as well. And then I did my residency in pediatrics at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. My fellowship in allergy immunology at Rainbow Babies Children's Hospital, Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio.
So you have quite a bit of experience in pediatric medicine?
Yeah, I'm boarded in pediatrics.
Okay. And were you still in medical school when you were married?
No,
When did you finish school?
I finished in 2000. I graduated med school in 2007,
And when were you married?
2008.
And you and your wife have 5 children?
Yes, that's correct.
And what are their names and ages?
So Claire is 13, Henry is 11, Sylvia is 10, Andrew is 7, almost 8, and William just turned 5.
And do you know what your gross annual income is?
So my gross income for 2023 was about $360,000.
Okay. And do you pay for health insurance?
I do.
And do you know how much you pay for health insurance?
About $397 a month.
And who does that include?
So that includes the whole family.
And do you get bonuses?
I do.
And were the bonuses included in that gross amount that you indicated?
They are.
And are you guaranteed bonuses?
No, it's based upon production.
And how much have they varied since you've been working for Oakland?
So they varied from 0 to about $40,000.
And I'm going to turn to Exhibit 3, which has been stipulated for admission, which is a paycheck that is the period end date is 11/25 of 2023.
Okay.
And it indicates here that you have deductions coming out for a 403B and a 457. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah.
And then there's health insurance.
Yep. And then also a health savings plan, a health savings account, HSA.
Okay. And you have a vision and a dental plan.
That's correct. So I did include those in the amount.
So you did not include the vision and the dental.
That's correct, sir.
And are all of the children covered for that?
They are.
And is your wife currently covered for that?
She is.
When you do receive bonuses, when do you receive them?
That's varied over the years. Currently, we get 3 bonuses. One is for the initial 6 months of the fiscal year, which begins in April. And then we get the latter 2 quarterly bonuses. Typically about a month after the quarter ends.
And your pay stub in Exhibit 3 indicates that you net about $6,624.
Back then, yes.
And is that still the case?
No, it is not.
And why not?
Child support.
And how much are you paying for child support?
Approximately $1,300 per paycheck. Which is every 2 weeks.
Okay. And so that leaves you with a little over 11,000 a month net.
I printed up a pay stub from most recent now to reflect that. So each paycheck, it looks like $4,771.94.
Okay. And in addition to that child support, have you been paying any other household expenses for your wife pursuant to the partial settlement agreement?
I have.
And what expenses have you been paying?
Food, clothing. I was paying for the mortgage until the April 1st payment. Heating, electric, garbage, internet. Trying to think what else.
Are you paying for any joint credit cards?
Yeah, I am.
And do you have an estimate on how much per month that those expenses are running?
Yeah, as an aggregate whole, though, that joint credit card has been about $4,000 to $6,000 per month, the total payment. I use the credit card primarily for gas and the occasional Sam's trip, but since leaving the home, I don't have enough room to shop at Sam's Club. I don't have big freezers, so I primarily shop at the smaller box stores.
So of the 4,000 to 6,000 per month, how much of that do you think you've put on that card?
Yeah, I probably put maybe, so let's say $500, about $50 for gas every, 2 or 3 times a month, and maybe a Sam's Club trip once a month.
And does that credit card also include the food, the clothing, the electric, the garbage, all the other things that you're paying for that you listed?
It doesn't cover all of it. Some of the utilities are drawn directly from a bank account that Michelle is no longer on. That includes the city utilities, and also back pays. It pays the credit card, so the bank account pays off the credit card.
And where are you currently living?
I'm currently living in an apartment downtown Marshall.
And can you describe the apartment?
Yeah, it is above Schuler's Restaurant. It is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, approximately 1,600 square feet.
And how do you have the kids set up in the bedrooms?
Yeah, the boys' bedroom is a large bedroom. It's on the floor plan listed as a second den or a second living room. So the boys sleep there. They have a bunk bed with a trundle for William, and the girls have their own room also on bunk.
Okay. And how does that apartment compare to the marital home?
It is smaller, but we say cozier in real estate, right?
And have you found that you've had to downsize your spending since the separation?
Yeah, yep.
And how have you done that?
Well, the living expenses are much less. The marital home is a very large home. And so we recognize a lot there. The utilities are included in the apartment. So that's one of the big differences, at least on the face of it. And also not having the children, 4 weeks out of the month. There's less food to be bought during the weeks that they're gone. So I've kind of adjusted to changing my shopping habits and then just paying more close attention to the extras.
And have you figured out approximately how much you're spending per month?
Including the apartment rental or?
Correct. I mean, not including the household, the marital home household bills, but
Okay.
just including your household bills.
Yeah. So I'm using a different credit card to be able to separate and keep track of what I'm doing to get a sense of it. So I would say including the rental cost that I'm probably paying about $4,000 to $5,000 a month, all things included.
So altogether, you're spending about how much per month? 4 to 5 at your household and 4,000 to 6,000 at the marital home?
That's what I would estimate. And some of those items on the marital home side include things like the cost for the children's activities. So in the last few months, the girls have had dance costs. They include some things that I'm not sure about, but look like, dance pictures, things like that. But there are other additional things that I don't really recognize as costs to the home that are included in that amount.
Have you and your wife had any disputes regarding what the status quo costs should be?
Yeah, we have.
And what kinds of things have you had disagreements about?
Since leaving the home, there have been disputes about spending for clothing, things that are perhaps her clothing, and items that I would consider kind of more on the luxury end of clothing. The other dispute was her continued or new and continued use of the couples therapist that we previously saw ending in August.
What do you mean by new and continued?
We finished our therapeutic relationship once Michelle stated that she no longer wanted to be married and wanted a divorce. That was in late August of 23. We had one session afterwards to kind of wrap that conversation up. And then we elected to stop seeing her as a couples therapist. I left the home for the last time, the second time, on December 29th, 2023. And at that point, I recognized my phone is set up to receive automatic notifications when the HSA card is used, which is what we were using for the couples therapist. I noted that I received one notification that it had been used without my knowledge. And I thought, well, Michelle used it to see the couples therapist. I just left the home. Okay. I didn't know anything more about it until I, after a month or two of getting settled in, looked back at the credit card to see what was going on. And I saw a number of payments to her service since I left the home in late December. And I forget your original question. Sorry.
That's okay. Is this counselor covered under your insurance?
No, she's not.
And so how much are you having to pay per session?
It's $150 for a 45-minute session.
And are there counselors available through your healthcare plan that would be covered?
Yes, there are. And there's also an employee assistance program, which offers, I believe, 8 free sessions per calendar year through a variety of different mental health care providers
And
for the entire family.
and does your wife qualify even though she's not an employee?
Yes, she does.
What have you had an opportunity to review your wife's budget?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And do you have any concerns about her budget?
I think I don't know that I would say concerns, but there are some discrepancies that I felt might need some clarification. But I know budgets can sometimes be a little open-ended. The one that stood out to me the most was a monthly budget for hockey activities of $500 to $1,000 a month, I believe, which I thought was very high.
And do you anticipate that she will be contributing towards those hockey expenses?
I think all the child expenses, I would hope that they would, that she would, contribute to.
And do you have any idea what the hockey expenses are monthly?
So I made note of the registration fees for hockey, which is a one-time thing, divided throughout the hockey season. Henry's registration last year was $1,617. Williams was $885. That's the registration. Over the course of the season for Henry, what I could see on review of some of the used equipment purchases, and then I recall buying him new skates throughout once during the season, I probably spent about $150 for equipment for Henry. William rented stuff and took hand-me-downs from Henry, so we paid the Hockey Association $50 for him to use their loaner stuff.
And how often do you have to go away and get a hotel room?
Yeah, that's the other big cost, and I'm sure Michelle is thinking about that in designing the budget. It depends on the child, the team, and honestly, each season it's a little different. And so I would say if there are overnights, that would typically be a hotel room for about $100 to $150, 1 or 2 nights. That would happen maybe twice a month. Gas would probably lead to another fill of the gas tank, maybe $50.
So about every other weekend you're having hockey tournaments that require a hotel stay?
I know, I wouldn't say that frequent. I would say during a season for William, perhaps we didn't participate in a lot of them. Their team was a little bit gung-ho and we weren't so interested in that. I would say they probably had 3 or 4 for William's team, I would estimate. And for Henry's, probably 4 or 5.
And do the kids have to go to the overnight games?
Again, we entered William into it with the explicit understanding that he wouldn't necessarily go to all the overnights. They are a team, so they want everyone to participate, but there are often things that come up that the kids are unable to, and the team understands.
And do you know what your wife's educational background is?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it a bit. She has a bachelor's degree and certification in teaching.
And what does she teach?
She teaches high school French and Spanish.
And when was the last time that she worked?
It was when she was pregnant with Claire in Columbus. And so that would have been the year of 2010.
And do you know whether or not she has the ability, a current license in Michigan?
I'm familiar that her license is expired, as well as that in Ohio.
Do you know of any physical disabilities that your wife has that would prevent her from working?
No.
Does she have any mental health disabilities that would prevent her from working?
No.
And you've agreed to joint legal and physical custody of your children?
I have.
What is your current parenting time schedule?
So we trade the kids off for the week of parent custody on Fridays at 6 p.m. We've agreed to continue their homeschooling year. school year. And so during my weeks, before I go to work, I drop the children off back at the marital home. And then when I get done with work, I come and pick them up.
And when did that start?
That started on February 2nd, or I'm sorry, March 2nd. Prior to that, we had an informal agreement. Michelle was uncomfortable doing a week on, week off, so we were doing 3 days on and off.
And how has the week on, week off worked versus the 3-day, 3-day?
There are pluses and minuses to both. The week on, week off allows the kids to get a little more settled in, and I think overall is better for them.
And how do you feel like it's been going since you went to week on, week off?
There's adjustments, right? The kids are getting used to things. Primarily, it's been, the challenges I'm sure a lot of families have faced would include like getting enough clothing to my apartment for them. And getting everyone's schedules arranged. There have been a few hiccups there. But I feel like overall we've been, getting used to it. There's definitely a lot of acclimation to being in two different households for the kids.
And how long has your wife been homeschooling the kids?
So she's been homeschooling them since Claire left preschool.
Was Claire the only child who went to preschool?
No, she was not.
What other children went?
Henry and Sylvia went.
And where did they go to preschool?
They went to the Kinderhouse Montessori that at that time was on Division Street in Marshall.
Have you been home? I mean, before your separation, had you been in the home on days when your wife was homeschooling the children?
Yeah, I had from time to time.
And can you describe what a typical day would look like when homeschooling was going on?
Sure. They would wake up in the mornings. The children wake up at different times, and typically would get their breakfast going. A lot of times, Andrew and I would wake up first. He's a little bit of a morning guy, and so we would do some things together, eat breakfast, and then the other children would start to wake up. Their school time would typically start around 8 to 9 o'clock, and it would typically start with reading a book with Michelle on the couch, and then they would have different things that they would do individually, typically on their own. They would work on things on their own. They have binders of different things that Michelle sets out for them, and they typically independently work on it. They will typically have some sort of theme or other underlying project going on. I'm aware that here currently they've been working on a bird unit. And so we have budding bird watchers in the family right now. But they would have different things that they would work on. Typically they would, work and be done by lunchtime.
And have you been happy with their academic progress?
Academically, I think they've had, they use a workbook called Abeka Math, and they've been working diligently at that. And especially I've noticed since, the separation and divorce that they've been gearing very, very attentively toward that. The kids are very aware of where they are at in their schoolwork. It's a point of emphasis that they have an awareness of where they are. Early on, I felt that some of the children expressed a lot of anxiety about where they were with their math in particular. But otherwise, academically, it's hard to know. I was not I did not get a lot of access to what they were working on. I had to find out from the kids.
And did you ask Ms. Swender about the kids' progress? Did you ask to see assignments, testing, things like that?
I wouldn't necessarily ask to see the books, right? But I would ask, what are they working on? I would ask what kinds of things she was seeing, and she would offer that sometimes without my asking. I would often offer that if there's anything that I can do, and she would sometimes welcome me to help the kids out with, say, math or something like that.
Are your skills in, say, science better than your wife's due to your medical degree?
I mean, I don't know what her science background is, but I think she's competent in being able to show them different projects that she finds online, things like that, the level that they're at. But I'm always interested to talk to the kids when they have something related to, science, medicine, that sort of thing. They work on geology and things like that, geography. So I think she's, capable in those areas, and, she, but yeah, I mean, I'm higher degree than her. Sure.
Did she ever ask you for assistance with teaching the kids, say, biology or something that would be more in your wheelhouse?
No, she never did. And so I'm, the child that I'm the most aware about engaging in biology was Claire, maybe a year or so ago. And she would sometimes talk to me about some of the things, so we would have conversations.
And since the separation, has there been more or less communication regarding the children's academic work?
Less.
And why do you think that is?
My perception is that Michelle is very defensive about where the kids are academically and has been, trying to really gear them up. If there's a test that the court could initiate for the children, I think they would ace it.
And you said that usually the educational part of the day would end around lunchtime?
It would oftentimes, and it would be more loosely structured after that, if there was anything. When you homeschool, it's hard to draw a line between school and the rest of the time. So it's a hard thing to really delineate on a structured level, but the structured part of the day would be the morning. A lot of times the afternoon would not be structured. If the kids had work they had to do, they would do it. But for the most part, they were just kind of hanging out and doing their thing.
Did they engage in activities in the afternoon? Like, was that when Claire would go and do orchestra?
That's correct.
Were the younger children involved in any kinds of other educational experiences in the afternoon?
They were and are, yes.
And so we know Claire was in orchestra. What did the other kids do?
So, over the years, the kids have done different things. A few years ago, Claire and Henry, I can't remember if Sylvia did horseback riding, but that was offered through the Gull Lake Schools consortium. That was several years ago. More recently, Henry is taking a pottery class, a ceramics class downtown at an art studio. And as far as, more kind of like that would be like similar to an art class, the children take music, they take piano. And that would be Claire, Henry, Sylvia, and Andrew. And trying to remember what else. And then more extracurricular things.
How did your wife teach the children like physical education?
She exercises in the mornings before school starts a lot of times. And so sometimes the children would join her. The kids are interested in being active on their own. So I know Claire used to like to try to go running or things like that. And so they would often just play in the driveway and play in the backyard a little bit. I would try to get them involved. For example, we heard earlier, Claire's involvement in softball. I encouraged and tried to facilitate that. Likewise with Henry's hockey and William, and encouraging the other kids. We just had a backyard soccer league, right? I mean, we just played soccer in the backyard and the kids loved it.
And the girls are in dance.
That's correct.
And then does Andrew have anything special that he does?
He's still finding his way. He would answer video games and organizing his bedroom. Those would be his specialties right now. I believe last year, we tried doing flag football for him. He had a difficult time knowing what he was supposed to do and, had a difficult time participating. He was emotional with that. So flag football is not his thing. He did learn to skate 1 year with hockey, and he participated in acrobatics a few years ago with a dance studio and enjoyed that.
You said Andrew likes to organize his bedroom?
Yeah, he just had a medical procedure last week and enjoyed telling the nurses how he was good at organizing, and he was therefore very popular on the nursing unit.
And is it what's involved in this organizing of the bedroom?
He likes everything to be very neat and tidy, everything put away where it's supposed to be. He will sometimes get emotional upset if it's not where it needs to be.
But can you describe what happens without telling us what he says when he becomes emotional if things aren't tidy?
He cries, gets very emotional, and when he's able to collect himself, expresses that he's upset about what his room looks like. And
I mean, there are 3 boys in the bedroom, correct?
This was both at the marital home, but also in the apartment, yeah.
Okay. And
there are 3 in the bedroom, yeah.
And how messy does it have to get before he becomes upset?
Not at all. Well, you're talking to another boy, but in the mornings, Andrew's gotten in the habit of putting the trundle bed back under so that there's more space, and that's understandable. But the boys' room is actually very clean, which has been impressive to me. But the times when he's upset, there's more like clothes on the floor or toys there or books.
Do you think this is about the room not being tidy, or is it about a loss of control? Is it about something else?
I don't know. It's something that he's just gotten used to, having a very controlled environment and having things a certain way.
Are any of the kids involved in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts?
Thank you. Yeah, Sylvia's involved in Girl Scouts. Claire did in the past, but elected not to continue.
And Sylvia continues in Girl Scouts?
She does.
Does she enjoy that?
She does.
Are there any activities that you believe the children could be involved in if they were in public school that they can't be involved in as the result of homeschooling?
Yeah, there are some.
And what kinds of things do you think that they could do in public school that they can't do in homeschool?
In terms of formal activities, the sports would be one. You know, there are other clubs that occur in schools that the kids can't access. Music being the main thing they can access. I believe art is also accessible for a homeschooled child. But then I think there are other less formal activities that both currently and future, things like trips, field trips, stuff like that. And
the kids can go on field trips with mom, correct?
Correct.
And does she take them on field trips, like say the Dearborn Museum or things like that?
Sure. I saw that, you know, in, I believe, February, they went to the Henry Ford Museum. And she will do things occasionally. It's usually not formal. Like we have this field trip for this. It's more like we're going to go do this. They're not big productions. When they are, I would try to make it to them.
And do your children have many friends?
I'm not sure what many is. Sorry, not trying to be difficult.
Oh,
but
no, that's fine.
Compared to other children their age, I feel like they have less familiarity with fewer children.
Do the older children have friends who come over to the home for sleepovers?
No.
Ever?
No.
Have they ever gone to friends' houses for sleepovers?
No.
And since you've been separated, have the children had any sleepovers?
If you would call it a sleepover, in I believe October, I took the kids to their cousin's house for a sleepover. I believe Henry had a hockey tournament in the area, and so I took all the kids with me to go there. And so if you know their cousins are of similar ages, and so you know conceiving of that as a sleepover, we were celebrating I believe a birthday as well at the time. And so that was the first time that my 7-year-old son Andrew had ever been to their cousin's house.
Any subsequent cousin sleepovers since October?
Yes.
When did that occur?
I want to say January of this year.
Like during the Christmas break period?
I think it was after that.
Okay. And where did that occur?
Also at the cousin's house.
And how have the kids reacted to having those sleepovers?
Before going to the sleepovers, Claire expresses anxiety centered around bedtime and having the ability to have space. The children are much more, our children are much more regimented and controlled than their cousins. And that has been part of the reason they haven't had a lot of time to be around them. So Claire expresses anxiety about noise levels. We would talk about plans that we would make to make it more comfortable for her. And she would be reassured when she would know that I would talk to her uncle, my brother, about that, and her aunt, his wife. So she expressed some anxiety going into it. I would characterize it as avoidant. She wants to find a way to avoid things that she finds noxious. When I encourage her that I'll be there with her to help her through it and that we have a plan for her, she goes along with the plan. And then once the children are there, the rest of the children are excited before they go. When we get there, Claire takes, similar to other environments, she takes a little bit to warm up. And then before you know it, they're having a dance party in the living room.
Have you had any of the cousins to your house for a sleepover?
Yes.
And when was that?
That was in over Easter.
And are they male cousins, female cousins?
2 boys and 1 girl. The boys stayed at grandma's house, which is about 2 blocks away. And the girl, who has no sisters, would not take no for an answer. She wanted to be with her female cousins and her aunt, my sister. And so they had a sleepover at the apartment.
And was Claire anxious about that?
Yeah, she feels very able to ask to talk to me about things. And so I asked to talk to her about this and said, look, I know you're anxious about having people spend the night. What would you be comfortable with? And, you know, we talked about that. She agreed to have Tessie, her cousin, spend the night, and I suggested we have the boys stay at grandma's.
And is that apprehension similar to the way Ms. Ransom described Claire's apprehension about going on stage for a dance recital, or less, more?
Less. She has more control over her home environment, and so I can tell she needs to talk to me. And so when we do, we talk about different factors. I like to reflect on her past experiences when we talk about these things that are challenging for her, and compare them to that. And again, as the sleepover occurs, now it becomes nothing but giggling girls in the bedroom, and pranks being played on dad. It's remarkable.
And so it was successful?
Extremely.
And you said something about your children hadn't been allowed to be around the cousins because the cousins weren't quite as restrained and controlled as your children. Can you expand on that?
So the children don't get a lot of time to be around their cousins. And my feeling about that is that my wife's agreement with the way they are parented is she very much disagrees. She likes a high level of control in all things and has admitted as much. And she found it noxious to be around the children. And my impression is that she did not like my brother or his wife, and so restricted our access to them. They live 2 hours away. And again, my 7-year-old saw their home for the first time in October of 23.
When the cousins are all together, do you see any of your children shrinking away from the cousins or needing timeouts from the cousins?
Claire will at times, and she's able to get that. The other thing that Claire voices regarding time with the cousins is that the age discrepancy is, she's 13 now, and I can tell she's wanting to be around kids her own age. And she explicitly voices that distaste when she sees, well, I can't say. So she is showing desire to be around kids her own age. And although the cousins are close in age, they are not exactly. She wants, that exact age. And
she doesn't want to play with the little kids.
Right.
And so do your children ever go to birthday parties for friends, like through dance or hockey, things like that?
Claire has, and Sylvia has. And Henry has gone to a birthday party through theater, I believe. Hockey, maybe 2 seasons ago.
And have you hosted any birthday parties for your children where they could invite friends?
Claire, in the marital home?
In the marital home.
Claire has had that 2 or 3 times, I believe.
And do you have play dates with the children and friends of their own age?
They do. They are, I would characterize as occasional, but they have become more regular since I left the home. And
are you satisfied with your children's level of social development with regard to their peers?
No, I'm not.
And let's talk about each individual child, because they're all unique.
Sure. Yeah.
Claire, does Claire have any special needs?
She does. Yeah.
And so I know we've talked about her anxiety and her introversion. Do you know what the cause of that is, or is there a cause?
Yeah. She was previously evaluated by a psychologist and developmental pediatrician back in 2019. The diagnosis that was made was social anxiety. They recognized some sensory issues. She finds very noxious, loud, sudden noises.
And does she have any accommodation for that?
She has earplugs that have filters in them, sound filters, that she can adjust from lower to higher.
And does that seem to assist her with the noises?
Yes, but it doesn't assist her with her response. She still has the fight or flight response that can occur even with the high filters in.
And would therapy be recommended to assist her with that?
It has been recommended in the past, although not successful. But additionally, other recommendations were made to attempt to provide her with more integration in school settings.
So exposure?
Correct.
Okay. And what we've heard quite a bit about Claire from Ms. Ransom. What kind of personality do you see Claire having? Yeah,
Claire is very sweet. She is very intelligent. She is very independent. She again is an anxious child and has developed ways of coping to try to design so much structure around her day and her activities that she has no exposure to stresses, things that she finds stressful.
And so how does she do that? How does she manage to control that so that she can avoid those stresses?
She will be able to do that through the course of her day. She is used to going over all the children's schedules for the coming day, every activity that they do. She is used to things being very planned. Last summer, I left the home for 6 months to give my wife space and time. And while I was living at my mother's house, they live next door to a family whose children are friends with our children. When I lived there, they had more access to that family and were able to play more. Claire was very reluctant to go over to the house next door with her friend who's been over to our house for birthday parties, sitting with her mother to just go spontaneously play. She voiced reluctance because there was nothing planned, there was nothing scheduled, the activities were not planned, and was very reluctant after and anxious. After a few suggestions on my part, she agreed to go over and came back with a smile on her face and very happy that she had done so.
Are you concerned about Claire's inability to be spontaneous and her need to know what schedules are and to have everything planned out?
You know, I think it is it's a difficult balance. You know, we all like structure and we all like to know what to expect. You know, I was very nervous coming into this because I didn't know what to expect from today. But at the same time, so she does like structure, but I am concerned that need is so high that it limits her her access and opportunities to develop as an individual. And we have talked at length about that as it relates to her desire to have more friends her own age.
Okay, you and your wife have talked about that?
No, me and Claire.
Okay. Since you separated and since you moved into the apartment, have you seen any particular difficulties with Claire in adjusting to the transitions between the households?
Sure. Yes, definitely. She wants me to run everything exactly like her mother. And that includes very strict bedtimes that are delineated.
And when we talk about very strict bedtimes, what bedtimes are we talking about?
So we're talking that the bedtime routine starts at 6:45 in the evening. And it's not just that the timeline starts there. Prior to 6:45, things need to be done, right? The kids need to be fed and they need to have, everything kind of settled from the day. I get out of work typically at 5 o'clock and then pick up the kids and get home. So one of the big things for Claire has been to understand that I can't begin cooking dinner at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that I have to start doing things after. And so we've been working hard to prepare things and get things going as quickly as they can. But the other part of it is a level of wanting to control what the other kids' schedules are. And so we talked about her bedtime, Claire's in particular, and I asked her what it was back home. And, she told me, and I told her she could have that same bedtime. She reflected on it for a moment and then said, well, what are Sylvia and Henry's bedtimes? And I said, well, you don't have to worry about that. I'll worry about that. But then I acknowledged that Sylvia shares a room with her. And so we talked about her bedtime essentially being the same as it is now back at the marital home.
Are knowing the rules that you had when you were residing with your wife for the children, are your rules significantly different?
I think that to me, the way to think of it is that they are modulated. They are not different. And they are less explicit. So I am trying to get the children to not be hung up on the time. It is both fascinating and embarrassing that our 7-year-old child told the nurses last week that his bedtime is at 7:35. And I'm thinking to myself, how is that 7:35? Well, he got upgraded from 7:30 to 7:35 when he turned 7. This level of attention to timeliness is a source of anxiety and stress for the kids, as well as a way to control that stress and anxiety. And I find it concerning.
Do you think that moving from a homeschooling situation to a public schooling situation would assist Claire in particular and the other children with loosening up on that rigidity for scheduling?
I think it offers a blend of both. There is a schedule. You have to be at school and you have your classes that occur. It also, there is a certain amount of unknown. It's a very difficult thing the children don't really have much of a conception of what school is like. Claire was in orchestra for a year. Orchestra classroom is a very unique situation, a unique setting where noise is intentionally made. And the teacher sometimes has to focus on one group of children over another. So I do think that it will offer that. And I think it will offer the opportunity for all the kids to make more friends their own age. And Claire in particular has expressed the desire to have a fresh start and the chance to make friends.
Do you think that she'd be able to transition from homeschooling to public schooling based on with her issues with anxiety, social anxiety and introversion?
I do. And I've expressed that both Mom and I will be there supporting her regardless of what happens, and that she will not be left on her own. Her experience with orchestra, I think, is a great encapsulation of that she was successful, extremely successful in performing and learning in that setting. And granted, it's her wheelhouse, right? Like, she is stronger in musical things than perhaps math, but at the same time, she still performs at a very high level there too. I think so. On her plate, I think she views her academics as a slam dunk, and the social integration is the real challenge that she would face. And I've expressed that we would support her with that.
Do you agree that the academics would be a slam dunk for her?
I think some yes and some no. I think anytime you go in a new learning paradigm or environment, that there are ways that you have to adjust to things. And I think that would be another strength of schooling for them, that they would have the opportunity and challenge to learn from different instructors who have different rules and different ways of teaching. They would also have the opportunity to work alongside other children their age that are at different levels and learn and help those children to learn in the classroom setting.
Do you have any concerns that your kids wouldn't be challenged enough in a public school setting?
I think that the first year we would get the temperature of that. Again, I haven't had parent-teacher conferences. I haven't had access to, know exactly where they're performing on each level. So I don't know where they're at in social studies. I don't know where they're at in, some of the sciences. They did a bird unit. I mean, they're looking at birds and identifying them. So what is age appropriate? I don't know. I don't have that training. But I think that there will be challenges and there will be things that we will learn about them. I know that Andrew is performing above grade level in math, for example. He's very proud of it. And I'm pretty sure some of the other kids are too. The Abeka workbooks that they use are pretty high level for the age. And so I anticipate math will be a challenge. Fortunately, I think there are a lot of opportunities, especially as they get older, that they would be able to pursue higher level work where they need to.
Now, some kids are social butterflies and have a lot of friends. Other kids have a tendency to have like a best friend or a couple of best friends that they're very close to. Does Claire have a group of friends or a best friend?
She has some children that are closer friends for her, and she expresses concern, or she gets upset when those friends don't hang out with her, for example, at theater, and they hang out with other groups of girls, and expresses the desire for that person to be her best friend. And so we talk about what that means and how that might, play out through the course of different social settings. So Claire would strike me as someone who has, fewer friends that she wants to be closer, but also expresses, a little bit of like desire to be part of bigger groups, which I think is typical for that age.
If Claire's one of her best friends, one of her close friends is with another group of girls, does Claire hesitate to go join the group?
Yes.
Do you think that public school would assist her with learning that skill?
I do.
Is Claire close with Sylvia?
She used to have difficulties with her because Sylvia wouldn't keep her bedroom as clean as Claire wants it to be. I've enjoyed watching them share a bedroom at my apartment.
And have there been any issues with that? I mean, abnormal issues.
There have been no negative issues with that.
Do you think that Claire's activities with the theater and with dance are adequate substitutes for attending public school with other kids?
I don't.
And why not?
They are very controlled activities that have very direct, regimented physical components to them. Children have to be on stage. The girls and students have to be dancing and attending to their their routines. These are all very regimented things. Even in the theater, where there might be some kids on the stage and others sitting in the audience waiting for their turn to be on stage. Those activities are still very structured, and Claire does not, have much opportunity to be mingling. She's either on stage working on things or sitting, watching Dee Dee hang out with other girls and wishing she was there too.
Do you recall Claire's first exposure with the theater?
I do, yeah.
And can you describe how that went?
So that was the first year that she did theater. She was thinking about it and was a little too anxious to do it. And so she had the opportunity to do the curtain talk before the show started. And so the director of the children or of that play, or she was involved in the production that did the curtain talk, would take her up, and Claire would get to say one thing like, enjoy the show. And, she got a lot of positive praise for that. And I think it was a springboard to allow her to do future plays.
And about how many shows is she in per year?
It's hard to say per year, anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe.
And are you supportive of the theater activities?
I am. I used to be in theater myself, but in the children's theater here in Marshall, I'm concerned that it takes up a lot of their time, that they are in perhaps too many.
And would you support them doing some theater and doing other activities as well?
Without a doubt.
What other activities are you supportive of the softball?
Sure. Yeah. Claire has expressed a lot of, enjoyment of softball. It's a tough thing because kids do there's a lot of travel sports. And so for a kid who's just doing leisurely things, it's hard to keep pace with her peers. In past conversations with my wife, she's expressed that why have Claire do softball? She's not going to end up doing it, which I found to be a shame, but it's true that it's hard to access. But she's not bad at it for not getting many opportunities to play it. And I was pleased to hear that she was interested in doing tennis this summer. I think that would be a wonderful thing. Claire's got some good motor skills, and I think she'd put them to good use.
Do you think that children should only do sports if they're going to be able to progress to a higher level of sports?
No, definitely not. And I'm not trying to characterize my wife as saying that that's her expectation, but I feel like we get locked in with certain activities, and it's hard to break out of that. I certainly am sensitive to that with hockey for the boys, and recognize that it is a time-consuming thing. On the other hand, there's a need to get these kids around other kids their own age, and especially with them having been homeschooled. I feel like these planned activities, just as Coach Caleb said, they too just have their activities, and there's the free range classroom, lunchroom, playground kind of exposure that cannot be replicated with play dates.
And do you think that's the primary benefit of public school for, say, Claire?
It is one of several, yes.
What are the other ones?
I think it will demonstrate to her that she can overcome obstacles and do things that she didn't think she could do. And that kind of avoidant tendency for her is, you can see the conflict in her because she wants these things, but she doesn't know how to get them, meaning the socialization.
Have you personally heard your wife tell Claire or the other children anything about public school that would tend to increase their anxiety or their fear about going to public school?
Yes, although the conversations are not direct there. They are, it's not like, Claire, this is going to happen if you go to school.
What have you heard your wife say about public school that would maybe make the children anxious about attending public school?
When we hear about other children who are sick or different things that are going around, she highlights the fact that those children are in school and that they're getting sick because they're in school. The children have all expressed anxiety about getting sick more often. They are concerned about either being too bored and not challenged or too challenged in a school environment. In other words, they don't know what to expect academically. And I'm not sure that I have recognized Michelle telling them that would be the case, but those are concerns they've expressed.
And have you done anything to assuage those fears?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. We've talked about the fact that there are going to be things that are harder or easier, and that there would be ways that they would overcome that if that is where they ended up going. The other thing that I have witnessed, Michelle talk about is the level of poor behavior in the schools, and the kids are very concerned about that.
And your children generally are very well behaved?
Yes, extremely.
And let's talk about Henry. Does Henry have any special needs?
No. He has medical issues, but no special needs per se.
What kind of medical issues?
So he has food allergies, and he also deals with bedwetting.
Is that normal for a child his age?
It is not normal, but it is not rare.
Okay. And is that a physical issue or an emotional issue?
We've had it evaluated at U of M, the nocturnal enuresis, and there's been no physical abnormality that they found there. They've suggested he would grow out of it.
What kind of personality does Henry have?
He is very social and outgoing. He enjoys being around other kids immensely.
And how has he adjusted to the transition of going from your house to the marital home?
It's been challenging for him, but he's also thriving. He is very sensitive as well, and he takes criticism very, very, very hard. And so he's very sad about the divorce, and he's been doing an amazing job at trying to facilitate. When I first moved out, he was pretty upset about having to share a room with his brothers, because in the marital home it's huge and every kid pretty much has their own room. It was interesting to see how quickly he acclimated to that, to the point where he expressed that he was no longer unhappy about it.
And do you believe that he would be able to transition from homeschooling to public schooling?
He would thrive.
Of all the kids, would he be the easiest to transition, or would some of the others be?
He would have a challenge because, he's a boy. And so some of the challenges he's faced in a microcosm in hockey, for example, other boys being a little bit more like, bragging about their skills and him feeling upset about that. So these are things that I think are very, I'm going to say normal, but these are things you're going to run into is, different kids acting different ways. And he's only seen a subset of that on a hockey team. In his theater activities, he's extremely popular and loves that popularity. Especially with older kids, where he's been in plays with some of the older kids, he enjoys that, and he's had some lead roles, which has been a source of pride for him.
What are his academic strengths?
He's fairly strong in math, and he's very good with building, visual spatial things. Artistically, he's very talented. I'm very very proud of him for how imaginative and creative and happy he is with making things.
Does he have any academic weaknesses?
Again, I've not had a formal debriefing on that, but I've noticed that, handwriting and spelling have been challenges for him, but I think there are things that he's working well at, and he reads, very avidly.
And you said he's very social. Does he make friends easily?
Yes.
Does he approach other kids easily?
Most of the time.
Does he have very many friends in Marshall?
No.
And how often does he get to see his hockey friends?
Only at hockey practice and games, and the one time that my wife arranged a play date.
And has mom been supportive of Henry's hockey activities?
I would characterize it as no.
And why is that?
She has frequently expressed a reluctance to take him to hockey practice, stating that Battle Creek is unsafe and she is not comfortable being there. She has expressed that hockey is my thing and she doesn't want to participate in it. So if I can't get the kids to practice or a game, they can't go.
Have there been times when she's taken them without you?
Yep. When I had COVID, she took them.
In your opinion, would Henry benefit from having friends his own age locally?
Yes.
Is Henry close with his brothers?
No, they are younger than him. And so it's challenging for him to be close, and antagonistic, as we'll get to William. And so it has been difficult for him because he's kind of caught in the middle. He is between Claire and Sylvia in age, but they have this sister thing going on. And it is a frequent every week or two that I hear from him about that they don't want to share time with him. And, he's kind of, we're dealing with the younger two boys. He doesn't have a ton in common with them. He's grown closer to Andrew, I've seen in the last few months. But he feels lonely. I would characterize him as feeling lonely.
So his relationship with his brothers don't fill that need for friends?
No.
What do you think the biggest benefit to Henry would be from public school?
I think it would be the socialization and giving him more topics and opportunities to learn from different people with different styles of learning.
And do you think that he would adapt more or less easily, say, than Claire, to being around kids from different backgrounds?
I think he would.
Has Henry had the opportunity to take any elective classes in public school?
No. Unless you count the Gull Lake activities as public school, but it's a homeschool consortium.
Do you have any worries about Henry not being challenged enough in public school?
I think he's pretty advanced in math. And again, so I think he'll explore opportunities with that. But I think he'll be performing, I think he'll be engaged.
Have you observed any anxiety with Henry at the prospect of potentially going to public school?
I think it's the same as my broader statements about, will I be at grade level? Will I be challenged enough, or will I be too challenged? He's been more on the side of too challenged. He expresses a lot of anxiety about his performance in math. Is he caught up? Is he at the point, especially when I moved out of the home the second time, he had a lot of anxiety about math, even though he performs well at it.
The children know that there's this possibility that they could go to public school.
They are aware, yeah.
And what specifically have you told them?
I've told them that there's a possibility that the judge might decide that they would go to public school.
And let's talk about Sylvia.
Okay.
Does Sylvia have any special needs?
No, I wouldn't say she does.
What kind of personality does she have?
She is very quiet and reserved, but she has a wild side to her. And she, so she would be the kind of person that I think, so like when I see her in different groups, she will be quiet, especially kind of one-on-one. She doesn't verbally disclose a lot, but when she gets in groups of kids or is around people that she is enjoying, she blossoms as well and really has a fun time. She's very cooperative in her play. She is very responsible. She is very helpful. She is very resourceful.
And since you separated, has she had any difficulties with transitioning between households?
You know, to me, it's been interesting to watch her. She's very smart. She's very attentive. She picks up on cues. She has seen these processes that I've described with Claire and Henry regarding rules and times and the way that we're going to run things. I've tried to express to the children that things won't be exactly the same in my home as they were in our family home, and that we're going to work on this, and it's a work in progress. She seemed extremely receptive to that concept.
And does Sylvia have friends?
She does. She has a few.
Okay. And does she seem to make friends easily?
She's very willing to engage with new children. You know, on the trips that we've taken to go see the cousins, she's had opportunities to play with other kids that she doesn't know, and she's taken that up very readily. I would say that she is very happy to engage with other kids, but probably one-on-one is a little more reticent or just kind of a little slower with it, but still a very pleasant kid to play with and have fun with.
Is she, would she be likely to approach a new child to initiate a friendship?
Yeah, I think she would.
More so than Claire?
Yes.
Do you believe that transitioning her from homeschooling to public schooling would assist her?
Yes, I do.
And in what way do you think it'd be good for Sylvia?
I think she would have the opportunity to be her own individual and not be the kind of peacemaker and manager amongst the kids' little dynamic that they have at home right now. She would be able to branch out on her own and be her own person. And, you know, she's a wonderful kid, and I think she'll do great.
What are her academic strengths?
You know, she's, again, like all the children, you know, an avid reader. She's reading very high level. You know, she has frustrations with math, but I think she's at level and does just fine. She's, you know, also very gifted musically and with dance, and, you know.
So how did she do with the sleepover with the cousin?
She had the time of her life.
Would you like to see the kids have more like sleepovers with cousins or with friends?
Yes.
And why do you think that's important?
Because it gives them the opportunity to be around kids that they want to spend time with in an unstructured way, but still be safe. And they've enjoyed being able to share their experiences in their space with other kids.
Do you, is Sylvia involved in the theater?
She is, yeah.
And how does she do in those situations?
My impression is that she enjoys it
And
does well.
And she's had dance recitals as well?
She has, yeah.
So does she have the same kind of apprehension of going on stage that Claire does?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And are you supportive of those activities for her?
I am.
And what about Girl Scouts?
Yeah.
Does she enjoy Girl Scouts?
She does.
What kinds of things do you know about that she does at Girl Scouts?
You know, the Girl Scout troop that they're in is great. And I believe we'll hear from her troop leader from defendant's side. You know, they have a lot of neat activities that they do. They'll go to the library, they'll go to local businesses, and do a lot of different kinds of activities.
Any camping yet?
Not yet.
And have you observed Sylvia being apprehensive about the prospect of public school?
A long time ago, yes.
Andrew, does Andrew have any special needs?
I think he has a high level of anxiety, and he was just diagnosed with a medical condition last week.
Okay, and would that medical condition be anything that would prohibit him from being able to attend public school?
No.
And do you think the social anxiety would be so much that he would be unable to attend school?
No.
What, tell me about his personality.
He is very bright. He is very cheerful. He is very funny. He's very intelligent. He's very witty. He has an amazing sense of humor. And he, again, I've just seen increasingly the need to know time. And, some of that is just him, but it's the level of anxiety he experiences with knowing times, timeliness, that rigidity I'm seeing more blossom in him in the last year.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about that rigidity with time. Was there a time when you took the children out for a meal at a restaurant?
Yeah, when I moved above Schuler's, we decided that we would go eat at Schuler's that first night that they would stay with me.
And how did the children react to that?
They had a great time. We had a great meal. The server, this woman, was very, very nice. So it was just trying to make positive out of a difficult situation. And in that regard, it was great. We were eating dinner and then, the kids that are a little more aware of schedule and time started to realize that we were getting close to 6:45 and maybe we shouldn't have dessert.
And did you have dessert?
Yes, we did.
And did you get home by 6:45?
I live above the restaurant, so we got home after that, but I reassured them that it wouldn't be a long drive home.
Did getting home after 6:45 cause any of the children anxiety?
I think by the time the dessert got in them, they were okay with getting home at 7:30.
What is the bedroom routine as you understand it and as you observed it when you lived at home? What is the 6:45 timeline?
So, I don't want to be too much of a hater of the 6:45, right? I mean, there's something to be said for getting the process started. William takes a long time to get to bed, and the other kids like to read. And so the other kids go read while people attend to the younger children. And you go on and on from there. The challenge that I've expressed to the children is that I don't always have the time to be able to make sure that dinner is ready, spot on the table at 5:30 when I get done with work at 5. So I've just tried to highlight that there's going to be differences in how it used to be done and how it is now. So in the marital home, 6:45 would begin. For the younger children, the older three would kind of be on their own. And this is, I feel, where a lot of the, again, the loneliness for Henry is he has no peer. And this, again, is a time for him to be able to branch out and be himself. He doesn't have anyone to hang out with. He tries very much to coerce my mother to stay during bedtime a lot, so he has people to hang out with. So anyway, the process continues and the other kids go to bed after that.
So if the children, the three older children, are involved in a theater production or a dance recital, did those sometimes go late so that the 6:45 deadline can't be met?
They do.
And what happens then?
The kids do the activity, and the younger kids go to bed when they do, and the older kids go to bed when they do, whenever they get home from the activity.
Are the theater nights sometimes late nights?
They are, especially the week before production. Yeah.
And how late will the children be out then?
10 o'clock or later.
And do you see any issue with that?
Just the intensity and the number of nights in a row that they do that. They're exhausted by the end of it, and the whole family is, because it places a stress on all the family when that happens.
Is that easier with homeschooling than it would be with public schooling?
Yes, it is, because they would be able to sleep in the next day, which they do.
And so that's a deviation from the schedule that's permitted?
Yes.
Has Andrew experienced any difficulties with the transition between the households?
Yeah, especially related to schedule and time.
And you indicated that he's also gets more upset if things are out of order.
Yeah, mainly in his room.
And he can handle like a cup in the sink or something like that?
Yeah.
And what activities is he involved in?
So he is, as I said, he had done one theater production before and done a theater camp. He did flag football one year and did some ice skating one year. But currently just doing piano.
Does he have friends?
Not in an explicit way, no. Not formally.
Does he have fewer friends than the other three older children?
I would say so, yes.
And does he make friends easily?
Yeah, he's very personable. Yeah.
Where would he have the opportunity to meet children his own age in order to make friends if he's not involved in many activities?
The kids all are very rote in knowing that the opportunities that they have for socialization. They include Sunday school, theater, whatever activities they do.
So
they know them.
The children all attend Sunday school?
So Sylvia, Andrew, and William do. Claire and Henry don't because of conflicts.
And does Andrew have friends in Sunday school?
He has people that he likes a lot. Yeah.
Any kids in Sunday school that would come over to the house that he would go to their house?
It would be possible, but no, that doesn't happen.
Can you think of the last time Andrew had a friend who came over or that he went to their house?
No, I can't.
Do you think Andrew would benefit?
Oh, I can't think. Sorry.
Okay.
Last summer, we had a family who lives nearby have their kid who was close in age to Andrew come over while I took Claire and one of her friends on a bike ride with her dad.
Do you think Andrew would benefit from meeting other kids in public school?
Yes.
Do you think he'd have any problems connecting with other children?
You know, he's a little quirky. And so he would learn a little bit about how to interact with different kids with different personalities, other than the ones that he's been around so far.
Does he ever seem lonely?
Yes.
And he doesn't fulfill that need with Henry or with William?
He has a hard time with acceptance from the boys. You know, William we'll get to, very rambunctious. Henry just a little bit like, you know, he gets annoyed with Andrew sometimes and, you know, just otherwise is disinterested at times, although they share some things that they do together, Pokemon cards, video games, things like that, reading books. Yeah. And so Andrew kind of almost shies more towards the girls. And at least right now, Sylvia and Andrew are kind of got their thing going on a little bit, hanging out together.
So Sylvia and Andrew are sometimes more aligned, and then Claire thinks she's too old for the other ones.
Right. And Andrew, again, is less rambunctious than either Henry or William. And so, you know, things get a little too wild sometimes. Just last weekend, we were up visiting the cousins for their daughter's first communion. And the boys were playing with a bunch of other kids, or at least Henry was. And Andrew was a little more kind of tagging behind a little bit, but still keeping up. Yeah.
How often have you seen him around boys his age?
Andrew?
Andrew.
Not very often.
So is it hard to assess how he'll do?
It's not hard because I see that he has some challenges and that he just hasn't had a lot of opportunities yet.
And William is 5?
He is.
And is he eligible for kindergarten this coming school year?
He is.
Has your wife been educating William for preschool?
As far as I can tell, yes.
And William didn't attend preschool.
That's correct.
And Andrew didn't attend preschool.
Also correct.
Why did those 2 children not attend preschool when the other 3 did?
I can't remember, other than the preschool stopped being a preschool around the age that Andrew and William would be. Certainly William, I can't remember. I think Andrew might have had an opportunity one year before it stopped being a preschool and just being a daycare.
Do you think the preschool was helpful to the children?
I do, yes.
Did the 3 who went seem to enjoy it?
Claire certainly had challenges, and that was the impetus for beginning homeschooling. But the other, you know, Henry and Sylvia enjoyed it.
Would you have liked to have seen William in preschool?
Yeah, I think he would have benefited.
And does William have any special needs?
You know, I'm not sure that I would say special needs, but he's very demanding and you know, can have kind of what do you call it? You know, he can be kind of aggressive.
Typical youngest child?
I would say so. He's a challenge.
And have you observed any difficulties with him in the transitions?
Yes.
And what kinds of difficulties has he had?
When I left the home for the first time in February of 23, I observed him to be very, very emotional and sad when he was around me. He clung to me very much. We were at the Mass for Palm Sunday in 2023, and I held him the entire Mass. It's not a short Mass. He looked at my face, touched my face, and cried. Later, my wife explained that this 4-year-old child realized it was just the sad music he was upset about. I've seen him emotional, upset other times when I've left the home. Those first 6 months that I left the home were very difficult for him, and he missed me immensely. And he continues when I'm with him. He is very, very much wanting to be around me, very close the entire time.
Now, because he's young, there's not much of a transition from homeschooling to public schooling.
Correct.
How do you think he would adapt to going to kindergarten?
I think he'd probably adapt like a lot of kids his age. It would be a little bit hard to be away from home, but I think that with the right environment and, you know, teachers who are, you know, trained and educated and dealing with that age group, that he would do very well. He likes being around other kids.
And have you looked into any kindergartens for him?
I have.
And where have you looked?
I've primarily looked, being from here and knowing a lot of people, I know a lot about some of the schools in general. It's a small town, but the one that I've primarily looked at was Marley School.
And why Marley?
There were a few different things. Number one, that I'd heard from a lot of different parents that it had a very good environment. Taking, the children as a whole in consideration, I felt it would be the best choice for all of them to be together. I think that would be a great way to transition them from a homeschool environment to still being all together, so to speak. It'd be one less thing for them to worry about.
And Marley has what grades?
K through 8.
So what grade would Claire be going into in the fall?
She would be going into 8th grade.
So all the children would be in the same building?
That's correct.
And have you gone to Marley?
I have.
And have you taken a tour?
No, not formally.
Okay. And did you speak with a principal or somebody at that school?
I did. I spoke with the principal.
And do you have a preference for Marley if the children are sent to a public school?
I do. I think it would serve them best.
And how do you think it would serve particularly the kids who would be in middle school best?
They have smaller class sizes, and they have a lot of kids with special needs. So to the extent that the kids would have challenges in different ways, my assessment and talking with the principal, Mr. Holt, was that they would have a lot of ability to help kind of foster and shepherd the kids into that kind of environment. They have a very welcoming environment, a very family-like environment. When I was there visiting, they were having parent-teacher conferences, and there were a bunch of families just hanging out in the office with their little babies, and just people waiting to talk to the principal, and just a very friendly environment.
Do you know if in the middle school classes the kids change classes like they would at Marshall Middle School?
I believe they do. They have different subject teachers. Yeah.
Do you know how the class sizes compare?
Yeah, roughly I do.
And roughly what the class sizes are at Marley?
Yeah, so I talked with Mr. Holt about that.
Okay, that's going to be hearsay.
Yep.
So we will not go there.
My impression is that they're smaller.
Do you disapprove of the kids' involvement in theater?
No, but I feel that sometimes it is too demanding and it's too frequent.
And if you could change up their activities, what would you change?
I don't know that I make a big change other than perhaps not committing to so many plays. I'd like to see them involved in, diversity of things. There are obviously, a lot of gifts and talents along the music and performance arts area, and they're going to grow in that regardless. But I want to give them the openness and opportunity to do other things, even if they're not good at it, if they enjoy it. I'm pleased that they enjoy what they do. It means a lot to me.
Are you asking for the kids to go to public school solely for the reason that you don't want to pay as much money in spousal support?
Absolutely not.
What is your primary reason for wanting the children to be in public school?
I've seen what they have gotten from homeschooling, and and I've seen how they've developed in that way. And I see the barrier that homeschooling presents for their social development, and I don't see a way that it can be overcome with homeschooling. There is no substitute for them being in a classroom with children their own age of a variety of different skill levels, grade levels, and teachers with a variety of different teaching styles and rules and subjects. Those teachers being trained in the areas that they are teaching to foster my children's intellectual and social development.
How long have you been dissatisfied with the homeschooling situation?
I started noticing issues with it when Henry started entering school in grade levels.
And did you discuss that dissatisfaction with your wife?
Not explicitly, not at first.
And why not?
At first it was obvious that it was, working well for the family routine, which is again very regimented. And so integrating the children into the homeschool environment allowed that control to continue. I am reluctant that I did not speak out more about what I noticed in the past. But at the time it was working and it was making everyone happy, and I wanted to keep the peace. As is evident by the fact that we're sitting trial for this topic, this is a very important matter for my wife.
Are you content with the children being home with their mom for the majority of the time every week?
No, I'm not.
And why not?
I know there's different definitions about joint physical custody, but there would be no question that she would have much more time with the children than I would. Additionally, I feel that my wife's need for structure and control and kind of very regimented home style is creating, my children are modeling it, and it is in some ways maladaptive for them.
And when you say regimented, we've talked about schedules. Is there anything else that you find is very regimented and strict about the way she runs the household?
You know, through the course of couples therapy, Michelle shared the levels of anxiety and stress that she would experience with routine activities in the home, such as cooking, such as keeping a clean house. The children, she enforces that with everyone in the home. When they do not pick up their dishes, I challenge anyone to present a 4-year-old who puts his dishes in the dishwasher faster than William. Additionally, the children, you know, are very concerned about following these rules. They were going with a family member to get smoothies at Serendipity and required a phone call to Michelle to make sure it was okay that they got those. They are concerned about which door to enter into the home, and they are concerned about putting their shoes away immediately upon entering the home. It seems strange to advocate for a kid not putting their stuff away, but the level of stress and kind of vindictiveness that occurs when someone doesn't follow that rule is extreme. And the kids were policing my behavior in that regard, both in the marital home and when I moved out.
Can you describe what you mean by the vindictiveness if they don't follow those rules?
Henry, dishes. Henry, your dishes. Immediately upon getting off the table.
So would Henry, like, for example, walk away from the table and then be corrected to bring back the dishes, or
Yes, immediately.
How quickly did that happen?
Immediately. Consistently.
And you said that the kids would get in trouble for not entering the right doorway?
That's correct.
And what door was the correct one to enter?
The garage door.
And what happened if they would come through, say, the front door?
They would be reminded that it's not the one they're supposed to go in.
And was there a reason for that?
That's not the one you're supposed to go in.
That's the only reason?
That's the one that Michelle prefers.
What kinds of consequences did the kids experience beyond, like, kind of the barking orders?
You know, there was a time that Henry was upset and needed to be hugged, and Michelle offered to do that after he put his dishes away. Another time he left a backpack on the ground after coming to visit me at my mom's house. It had his comfort blanket, his starfoof in it, and Michelle hid it and told him that she had told him to pick it up and that he would have to give her money to present it back to him, his overnight backpack with his blanket in it.
And how do you think them being at school during the day rather than with mom during the day would assist them with dealing with this regimentation?
I think they will see different styles of discipline and structure, and they will see different children with varying levels of behavior. I mean, it's unfortunate that we can only talk to adults. Every adult that comes today and during this trial will say what amazing children our children are. They are being raised to be young adults, and they are children still. And I appreciate, you know, the level of discipline that they have, but there's something lacking, and it's a subtle thing. It's hard to describe, but other family members that are around see that in them.
Do your children have the ability to work cooperatively to help each other out and help other children?
They have a very, especially Claire has a very strong mindset of, you take care of yourself, I'm not going to take care of you. And it's a very much like, I do everything, they do nothing kind of mindset. These are things they're modeling.
Do you think that public school would help them learn how to work cooperatively with other children?
Without a doubt. I mean, imagine it, right? Who's easier to get along with, your friends at school or your siblings? I mean, you know, this is something that I think would be very helpful for them to be around peers rather than siblings all the time.
How often are your children around children of different socioeconomic classes, different levels of intelligence, different racial backgrounds, different family structures?
Rarely.
Do your kids have a lot of friends that come from divorced families?
They have some.
Do they have a lot of friends who have a lot less money?
It's hard for me to gauge that. I don't know how much money their friends have, but nothing obvious. Most of them are homeschooled and have the ability to homeschool because of that. So I presume that there is money involved to allow them to do that.
Do your children, are they ever around kids with disabilities?
Probably. Rarely, though, and not individually.
And your children have worked with a Girl Scout leader, coaches, music teacher, dance instructors. Other than those people, have they been around? Have they been instructed by a lot of different adults with different styles of teaching or parenting?
I would say no. In fact, you know, their social opportunities are limited in that again, to use the example of their cousins, they were not allowed much access to the cousins because of the way they were parented. And other hockey teammates, Michelle has refused as friends because of their behavior.
What concerns do you have about the children if they continue to be homeschooled until they finish high school?
I'm concerned that they will have a hard time entering into the quote unquote real world. They are, they have been fostered under very controlled environments, and it shows in their preferences for social and academic environments. Homeschooling is all they know, and they don't know what the rest of life is like. They've expressed a lot of curiosity about it, and I have witnessed that curiosity in many different settings. It's almost like going on safari, and the kids are looking out the window, looking at this entire other world curiously.
And do you want your children to go to college?
I do.
It sounds like your children are exceptionally intelligent.
I think so.
Do you think that they'll have the ability to go to college if they want to do that?
I do.
Do you want their first interaction in a large school setting to be in college?
No, I do not.
And why not?
I think there are a lot of social transitions that would happen at the college age. We're all familiar with some of the things that go on in college, and I would be very saddened that they would not have the opportunity to learn how to be around different people their age with different behaviors, personalities, intellects, mannerisms, and backgrounds until they're in that challenging time of life when they are young adults and trying to learn more advanced material.
Are your children a little bit naive?
Yes.
Would you consider them worldly at all?
I would consider them much less worldly than kids their own age.
How easy would it be for other children to take advantage of your children?
I think it would be fairly easy.
And do you think public school could remedy that?
I think it would give them the opportunity to be exposed to kids that have different behavior styles and different ways of interacting in both negative and positive ways. I don't wish my kids to be bullied. I don't wish them to have negative experiences. And that's why I've kind of looked at Marley as an opportunity to transition them pretty comfortably in. There was a very welcoming atmosphere that was explicitly stated to me by the principal.
Do you think that Claire could handle her first experience being out in the world, being in college, as opposed to being, say, at Marley?
No.
I think we've talked, a lot about the homeschooling community record of the children. I'm going to spousal support. Can you tell me a little bit about your marriage and what you see the primary cause of the breakdown as being?
I think that it's a hard thing to describe because it was subtle and gradual. But what I was experiencing in the marriage environment was a lack of emotional availability and engagement from my wife. That was when I would try to talk to her about it, would be met with denial and kind of dismissing these concerns, or in a frustrated way asking, what do you want me to do? And it wasn't so much what I wanted or needed to do, but to have some level of engagement from her. The feeling in the home environment was one of high anxiety and need to get things on task and on schedule. And it was, if I felt that I had to be perfect, almost more perfect than I had to be at work. And it was a difficult environment for me to be in. And she became increasingly uninterested in being around me or wanting to do things with me. That began to make me concerned. And then more things started happening in the last year or two that increased that level when I started to feel not only a lack of engagement, but then also visible outward signs that she was electing to not be married anymore.
With 5 kids, it could be difficult to have alone time.
Yes.
Were you able to ever go away for a weekend without the children, go on a vacation without the children?
We went for a weekend, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago. We went for an overnight in Cleveland. And we twice did one overnight in the casino in Battle Creek. And I think, again, it's not that, the feeling was not only that there was not activity, we didn't do things that much individually together, but that there was no desire for my wife to do so.
Did you have grandparents or other adults who could take care of the children while you took a cruise or a getaway somewhere?
Definitely.
Did you ever offer that to your wife?
Yes.
And what was her response?
She did not want the kids to be with anyone else for more than one night.
Did you socialize with other couples?
Very rarely.
Did you ever have adult friends who would come over to your house, have dinner?
Not as couples, no.
Does your wife have any close friends with whom she socializes?
I would suggest no.
Did you have arguments?
Very rarely.
Did you, when the kids would have recitals or concerts, did you sit together?
Sometimes, but sometimes not.
And what was a function of that not happening? Why would that happen?
You know, as the relationship continued to, decline, the one that stands out to me is Claire's, orchestra concert, and Michelle sat in a different row in a different section, away from me. And when I said, you can come sit here, there's a better view, she declined.
And how long ago was that?
That would have been the fall of 22.
Was that when things started to unravel?
I'm getting my times mixed up. Yes.
Was there a time when your wife stopped wearing her wedding ring?
Yeah,
And when was that?
that was something that was going on for some time.
And did you discuss that?
I did.
And did that upset you?
It did.
Did that lead to the couples counseling?
That's not what led to it, but it was something that I voiced, just like, hey, you never wear your ring. And certainly there are times when she didn't want to wear it, and her statement was that I take care of kids all day, I wash dishes, I work with raw meat, and it's cumbersome. And so if we would do something special, go out somewhere, if I were to say, hey, do you want to wear your ring, she would act put upon and frustrated, and those sorts of things. And it's, again, I earlier alluded to kind of these outward manifestations that would be met with denial and kind of downgrading my concerns and saying, you're being paranoid, you're being, overly whatever. Later through the course of couples therapy, she admitted to not even liking me for 5 to 7 years. And so these things that were kind of denied, it just feels like, this is all part of the picture.
Did those things hurt your feelings?
And I expressed that to her, yes.
Did you have any disagreements regarding a vacation to Alabama?
We did.
And what was that about?
We had scheduled the trip, and again, busy, lots of kids, accidentally scheduled it so that it would happen on a weekend that a play was going to show. Mind you, the plays for the year are announced, and they are on our family calendar when they are announced. The show Newsies that Mrs. Ransom was referring to earlier is the one that Claire was in, and we had accidentally scheduled a trip to go to the Gulf Coast in Alabama, a family trip in February, the same weekend that Newsies would show. I noticed it on the calendar and notified Michelle. She responded by saying that she is crying, and how could that happen? We later talked about it, and I'd already taken time off of work. We had already paid a deposit, and she indicated to me that Claire really wanted to be in the play, and that Claire would never forgive me if I didn't let her be in the play. We argued about that. I stated to her that it felt like she didn't have my back, and that she was kind of putting the activity of one kid over the family's activity that we had planned. We also argued about her level of interest about the trip at all. After discussing further with her, I agreed to take additional days off of work so that we could adjust the trip by a few days. And I've tried to make it a positive thing for Claire by publishing a little newsletter in a newspaper style stating that she'd be able to be in the play.
And did you end up going on the vacation?
We didn't.
And why not?
At that time, the relationship was deteriorating a lot, and I was becoming very, very depressed with the way Michelle was treating me.
Did she ever apologize for not wearing a wedding ring, or for not checking the schedule with regard to the vacation?
No.
Did she ever apologize for anything?
No.
What kinds of things, when you did argue, did you argue about?
Mainly our relationship and the level of time that we would have together, and her level of interest in having that time.
Did you ever argue about the cleanliness of the house?
It would again be in the confines of time. So would we spend time going for a walk, or would we have to make sure the dishwasher is emptied and task A, B, and C are done? I would often say to her that I felt like I was the last thing on her to-do list.
So if you had to start getting the kids ready for bed at 6:45, did that leave any time after they went to bed for the two of you to talk, to watch a TV show together, to hang out?
Occasionally, but increasingly rarely over the last 2 years. She would not welcome much time with me, and that was difficult to deal with.
And when you moved out for 6 months, was there any discussion about reconciliation? Did she ever ask you to come back, try to work on the marriage?
She agreed to participate in couples therapy at first, and then withdrew for about 2 months. And then we brought her back into couples therapy. I was seeing the couples therapist individually during those 2 months. And then she agreed to come back so that we could at least talk about what the kids are going through with an unexplained absence of me from the home, which eventually became 6 months. The initial discussion was that I was having a hard time sleeping, which I was, but eventually we had to talk to the kids about something else. And so that was how the couples therapist and I were able to get Michelle to re-engage in couples therapy. I would describe her engagement in couples therapy as very rigid. She initially declined doing couples therapy in the summer of 22 when my primary care first suggested that we try that. She then later agreed to do it, but only after Christmas. And at that point, the relationship was declining significantly. Between the end of December and the end of February, when I first left the home, we had a few sessions of couples therapy, at which point Michelle had a very strong turnaround and withdrew completely from me while I was in the home, which was very difficult for me to be around at the time.
What did that do to your emotional and mental state?
It was very difficult. I was going through a grieving process, recognizing that the relationship was declining and that Michelle was not the person that I thought she was. It was very difficult to imagine my children having to go through a divorce. It was difficult to feel isolated and to feel that the marriage was going to be ending.
Did she ever comfort you through any of that emotional distress?
She tried to the extent that she could, which was cold embraces, along with saying things like, I'm sorry, I can't do more with what you've done,
How long have you been married?
15 years.
And there's no reason you can't continue to work?
There's not.
You don't have any mental or physical disabilities that prevent you from working?
No.
And I think your wife has hearing aids?
Yeah.
And does that assist her in hearing to the point that she would be able to work?
Yes.
So you and your wife entered into a partial settlement agreement, correct? After we went to mediation?
Correct.
And we've divided up the marital estate.
We have.
And we divided up bank accounts, retirement accounts.
Correct. The retirement accounts are not yet divided.
Okay. And have you divided up the bank accounts?
We have.
And do you remember approximately how much money you had in the bank accounts that got divided?
I don't have it right in front of me. I think I emailed it to you.
Do you remember a ballpark of what you each received?
Yes. Yeah.
And-
So she received approximately $150,000 from the bank accounts. And I received approximately $90,000.
And that was for adjustments for personal property that you received?
That's correct.
And do you have any, do you have a ballpark idea of how much money she'll receive after your house sells?
Between the house and retirement accounts that remain to be divided, approximately another $500,000 to $600,000.
You each received a vehicle?
Yes.
And are there any debts on the vehicles?
There are not.
And did you divide up any debts?
There are none other than the mortgage on the house.
Okay. And you each received household items?
We did.
Did you receive enough household items to furnish your new residence?
Yes.
And in your opinion, are there sufficient household items left in the marital home to furnish another house?
Easily, yes.
Did you take the children's bedroom sets?
I did not.
Did you leave televisions?
I did.
Sofas?
Yes.
Kitchenware?
Yes.
Either a dining room or a kitchen table and chairs?
Several. Yes.
Do you believe that there would be very many things that she would need to purchase when the marital home is sold?
No, I do not.
When you and your wife were first married, did you have student loans?
We did. Yes.
And does she have student loans now?
No.
Do you have student loans now?
No.
Did you file your 2023 taxes together?
We did.
Was there a refund?
There is.
And have you received it yet?
Not yet.
Do you know how much that was?
I do.
And how much was it?
So federal return will be a refund of $11,585.
Okay.
And state will be $924.
And the plan is to divide that?
That's correct.
And you've been paying child support?
I have.
And I think you mentioned earlier how much that is.
Yeah, it's about $1,300 per paycheck.
And you've been paying the credit card bills that your wife still has access to and is using?
Yeah, and the utility bills.
How old are you?
I am 46.
And how old is your wife?
She is 43.
And we did talk a bit about your budget already. Would you agree that you do have the ability to pay some spousal support?
I do.
And do you agree that your wife has the ability to work and earn income?
I do.
And she just currently is choosing to stay home and homeschool the children?
That's correct.
And you talked about your current situation where you're residing. You're renting?
That's correct.
And do you plan on continuing to rent, or at some point would you intend to buy a house?
I would intend to buy a house.
Okay. And would you need funds for a down payment?
I would.
Would you anticipate that the house would be more or less expensive than the apartment?
It's hard to gauge with interest rates, but I would anticipate more just because of utilities alone.
Okay. And you're currently providing all of the income for both households?
That's correct.
Are you currently able to meet all of your financial needs?
I am.
Do you know of any financial needs that your wife has that are not currently being met?
I do not.
And I think we've already discussed both the health. Other than the children, are you responsible for the support of any other people?
No.
And how would you describe your standard of living prior to the separation versus now?
In terms of physical standard of living,
Correct.
the home that is the marital home is large and very nice.
Like how many square feet?
It is 3,700 square feet above grade and 5,700 total finished. It's a large house.
And I think you testified your apartment is 1,600 square feet?
That's correct.
And do you anticipate there will be adjustments to the standard of living as the result of the divorce?
I do.
And what do you think those adjustments will have to be?
I think they will involve more, prudent spending on things that are not necessary, and also, kind of prioritizing what things we need to save for and what things we can put a hold on.
Do either of you have expensive cars?
Mine is worth more than hers is. They both have approximately the same amount of miles on them.
And what do you drive?
A Mazda SUV.
And what does she drive?
She drives a Chrysler Town and Country minivan.
So nobody's driving Mercedes Benzes or Rolls Royces or?
Nope.
And you said you didn't really go on vacations?
We did. We would go on expensive vacations.
Okay. And take all the children?
Yes.
Which would make it expensive?
Yes.
Okay. And do you anticipate that will change, that you'll have to go on less expensive vacations?
Yeah, I think there will need to be, fortunately, Michigan has a lot of opportunities for stuff like that. But yeah, the expensive, $4,000 rentals in South Haven aren't going to happen anymore.
Okay. And have you taken the kids on a vacation since you separated?
I have.
Where did you go?
So I took the 3 eldest kids to Stratford, Ontario, with Michelle's permission, and we went to see a play there. And then this, for spring break, I took all the kids down to Cincinnati, Ohio, to go see the Noah's Ark exhibit in Kentucky and the Cincinnati Zoo.
Okay. Who has primarily contributed financially to the marital estate?
I have.
Have either of you received any inheritances that were contributed to the marital estate?
Only in a very minor way. My dad's inheritance contributed $3,000 to purchasing the piano.
Okay. Did your wife's responsibilities at home, taking care of the kids, homeschooling them, assist you in being able to earn income to support the family?
Yes.
As the children have gotten older, do you think those child rearing tasks have become more or less consuming?
Different. Now it's a lot more driving around to different activities.
Okay. And did your wife have any assistance with, say, cleaning or cooking?
She did.
And what kind of assistance did she have?
We had a house cleaner come twice a month.
Okay. Did you ever have any nannies or people to assist in taking care of the children?
Especially when we lived on Division Street, my family was right around the corner, so there was always someone to help out if we needed help. And a lot of other people in the community too.
Okay. Has there been any infidelity in your marriage?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did either you or your wife have any substance abuse issues?
No.
Has there been any emotional or verbal abuse?
No.
Has there been any domestic violence?
No.
Have either of you ever put your hands on each other?
No.
Do you believe that one of you was more or less at fault for the breakdown of the marriage?
I think no one is the bad guy in their own story. But from my perspective, and what I saw during couples therapy, Michelle was unwilling to work on things on multiple kind of, checkpoints of the therapy process. And when I was away from the home, initially because of how depressed I was, she exhibited no empathy or desire to reach out to me at all.
Did either of you bring up any allegations of abuse during your counseling?
No.
Are you residing with anyone other than your children?
No.
And do you believe that your wife is residing with anyone other than the children?
No.
So is it your understanding that your wife would like to homeschool the children until William finishes school?
Yes,
And what is your understanding regarding her request for spousal support?
that I provide support to allow her to run the household as it currently is for the next 14 years.
And do you find that reasonable?
I don't.
And why not?
I think that, we've been married 15 years, so I don't know how much levity we can have in these conversations. It's not a buy one, get one free, right? So in any event, I feel like that's an excessive amount of time to be providing spouse support, especially considering I would characterize her in the marriage as being checked out for the last several years. And I think she's wanted this for a long time. And so to me, it doesn't make sense to just completely support her raising 5 kids while I work all the time and get less time.
And do you have any objection to being there being maybe a short period of time for spousal support, rehabilitative spousal support to get her back on track with a job and taking care of herself financially?
I don't object to the idea, but hearing the testimony today, it sounds like there is ready access to this sort of thing. And also the estate that has already been divided. I'm not leaving her in dire straits here, but I would not object to it.
I have no further questions.
Well, I assume, Ms. Podolsky, that you have a lot to go into with plaintiff.
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do this? Why don't we take our lunch break at this point, and then what we'll do is we'll resume at 1:30.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.